Hey everyone, Matt Landfair here with Primary and Secondary. Welcome to ModCast. Today's episode is 334. The title, Psychological Stops and Pelvic Girdle Shots. Today is March 15th, 2023. This is going to be a cool discussion. As a matter of fact, I thought this discussion was going to be so cool because of the panel that we have. The amount of experience is impressive. I also have this live to the public. It's live on YouTube as we speak. On occasion, I'll do these. For the most part, though, if you want to watch these live, you have to be a Patreon subscriber of $5 or more monthly. That gives you access to some other stuff, Discord and whatnot. But the nice thing about having these live ones is interaction with people that are on the panel. If you have questions, comments, or whatever, they're brought up. Unfortunately, though, with this watching YouTube and the Zoom screen simultaneously and having a conversation is a bit much. So YouTube is kind of taking a back seat. Primarily watching the Zoom feed and the chat there that is up, that we've already had some people. There was already a question on there. My background's in law enforcement, been doing the cop thing since the late 90s. Getting close to the retirement time. I did take some time off in the middle, went back to school, found that was a kind of a waste of time. I think I have one semester to go though. I will finish it and go back to law enforcement. We'll see. Excited also next week is going to be a cool event for me. My first time going to TACCon. It's going to be I'm going to have a first world problem where I'm going to be meeting a lot of people that I'm not sure if I've met them in person or not, because I spent so much time with them online in situations like this. I don't think, Bryan, we've never actually met in person, have we?
Not but officially, no.
No. and Lee and Warren and John. So it's going to be unusual. It's first world problems. It's going to be awesome to meet people in person and hang out and get to know the crew that run TACCon and find out more about what it's about. The topic is cool. It's come up. It's Range Master. That's right. The topic tonight, it's really cool. Always enjoy discussing these topics because we have this caliber of people that have a lot of good experience that can be shared, and we can use these as references. One thing I want to make sure that you pay attention to when these guys are giving their intros, pay attention to the companies that they say they represent, pay attention to where they can be found, because it's super important that you support those sources that you have found to be beneficial. What I mean by that is, if these guys are providing some insight that might change your opinion on something, or it might reinforce a concept, or it overall just helps you, you might want to find these people on social media or on their professional websites, or maybe not LinkedIn, but find them, follow them, share their content when it's applicable and when it benefits you. That goes with everything primary and secondary. We have just started. Don't forget to hit like. And also when this is republished after it's edited, make sure you hit like as well. That's really helpful for us. If you have comments, please post them. If there are any subjects you want to see us cover, also email me at matt@primaryandsecondary.com. Happy to look over them. And putting the panels together sometime, it can be difficult, but it's always a good time to have these discussions. Just absolutely love them. So that's me. That's the background. That's primary and secondary stuff. Let's go into the intros with these guys. John, what do you have for us?
John Hearne, been doing the law enforcement thing since 1992. Prior to that, started my public safety career, firefighter, EMT, was an ALS provider for a while with my agency. So I put needles and tubes along the way, attended some autopsies. I guess one of my other claims is that I have a training company. One of my big classes I teach involves tactical anatomy. The most physicians I've had in a 12-person class is 4. 3 of them were ER docs in Jackson, Mississippi. I didn't get any rotten fruit thrown at me when I was talking to them. So, one thing that ER docs in Jackson, Mississippi have seen a few of is gunshot wounds.
Good stuff. So what you're saying is this is going to be a good discussion for you to be part of.
Hopefully.
I think so. Warren, what do you have for us?
I'm Warren Wilson. I'm a cop in Enid, Oklahoma. Mostly just a student, and I really wanted to chime in on this one just because I wanted to listen to it live. I'm the guy who really had all this stuff figured out completely 100%, and then realized I didn't. And as I went through the whole Dunning-Kruger thing a couple times, I've realize that we're never going to have it figured out. But I do love the insight all these guys have, and we're mostly interested to see what we come up with.
Well, that's the best thing about
stuff.
Yeah. Well, that's the best thing about this. Also, we think we have it figured out and we realize we don't. And then we have these awesome resources that we can call upon. If there's something I'm not quite sure. What do you guys think about this? Hey, Enid's not hiring, is it?
It just so happens Enid, Oklahoma is hiring.
Oh,
we have multiple spots and we pay from 50 to 70,000 for patrolmen in the first 6 years.
Oh, wow.
If you make captain, you might make up to 109,000. And that's in a town where the dollar is worth about $1.18. Low inflation, 50,000 people, low crime rate, and very good public support. I thought we were doing that at the end, but okay, cool.
Oh, no, that's fine. And just out of curiosity, if you happen to be working patrol, is there a possibility you don't have to pay for your meals? We've had these conversations.
Yes, you have to fight for it. We have to go back and they say somebody paid for your meal, and now we got to go back and, okay, can you give me change for this? So you have to start keeping cash with you so you can go back and put the tip down on the table and make it more, because you don't want to take anything free, but it's just the principle of it, the thought of it.
Yep.
That we like so much. It's just, people just want to take care of us.
Yeah.
It's a great place to work.
For me, going through drive-through, if someone ahead of me or if they pay for my stuff, let me pay for the person behind me.
And pray they don't have a huge family.
It pays off.
I've had those $40 bills before, but it's still worth it.
106? Okay.
Here's my credit card.
Yeah. Lee.
I am Lee Weems. I am a deputy sheriff in Georgia. I'm just 24 years now. I think it is 24, 20, on my way to 25. I have a company called First Person Safety, and I am being besieged by a golden retriever puppy that I agreed to take in for 3 days 6 weeks ago. To the point that I have now changed her name because she's living in my house. I want to name her what I want to name her. Her name is now Slinky because
what was it before?
Carmen.
Okay.
Her name is Slinky because she's very limber. She looks like a slinky falling down steps. And so that's what I've named her. She answers to it now. So she may be appearing randomly because she keeps coming in here and attacking me. Also a college professional on the side, and mostly just travel around the country making fun of Hearne and teaching about use of force stuff, law enforcement topics, and shooting.
Cool. So we just
and I have a podcast called That Weems Guy.
Yes, you do. With good guests on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we just got a puppy. Specifically, my daughter got a puppy and she named it Lucky. And our 2-year-old calls him Yucky. So I reinforce that. Darryl?
Darryl Bolke, retired law enforcement. I'm actually getting to the point I'm almost been as retired as long as I worked. I started in the late 80s, retired after almost 20 years due to injuries. Spent the whole time in patrol. On this end of what my background is, I cut my teeth with the firearms cadre at LAPD SWAT, which is the guys who invented the failure drill. Which I just talked to them the other night for an article. And I was assigned to a team at my agency that did officer-involved shootings. I've worked over 75. I have a lot of insight. Worked a very violent area of Southern California. So I got a lot of insight on what actually happens. And I can give a bunch of kind of firsthand stuff rather than I heard it from my neighbor's cousin who was a Marine once. And we'll go from there. We'll see what happens. Yeah, Marine SEAL. And and the other thing is I found my place in the industry of liking to be sort of the historian. So I've tracked down where a lot of this stuff has come from, both the facts and the myths. So I can address some of that tonight as well.
Awesome.
And this is a subject that keeps rearing its ugly head.
Yeah.
So I can kind of go into where it started, and then I can go to why it came back.
And that right there is why it's so important to have topics like this.
Yeah. So hopefully it won't come back again.
Yeah. And also we can prevent ammunition, or we can provide ammunition to the people that are fighting these battles also. And well, this is here's this reference.
Yep.
Good stuff. Bryan with a Y.
Hey, what's up? Sorry, I had a delivery just showed up right when you started the intro, so I had to go grab some stuff off the porch there. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no worries.
Where are we at?
Intros.
Let's see. It's Bryan with a Y. Almost retired cop. I actually set an official date today. Yay. Let's see. I guess the big thing that applies here would be, I spent about 11 years working the area where we had a level 1 trauma center. So I've seen all manner of gunshot wound, knife wound, and all of that. And I have a couple of really relative incidents for the whole pelvic shot thing that are kind of applicable. But let's see, other than
Belt Company.
Yeah, other than like the podcast, the Off Duty On Duty podcast, which most of you have been guests on at some point, except Warren and Matt. Oddly, we got to do that. I got that. I got EDC Belt Company. We build the foundation belt, the most comfortable, functional concealed carry belt made. Still working with that a lot. And then I got a Patreon page. It's under Eastridge Training and Consulting. Oh, look, Chuck's showing off his belt. One of them.
I was going to say, but he's not wearing it.
Was that the underbelt that I made you?
It is not. It's the green one I picked up from you in Oklahoma.
Oh, yeah.
So he does make underbelts.
Well,
to be fair, Chuck has to be wearing pants to have a belt on. So, be careful what you check.
So
pants are overrated.
So,
yep.
Board shorts and flip flops are in my future, man. But no, I do that. I get the Patreon page, Eastridge Training and Consulting. I go over some I call it home woven gunsmithery. Like instead of home woven handicrafts, it's just a lot of that. Some opinion pieces, some just general guns guy stuff that, how to take a revolver apart. I got a couple of videos on that and doing some action jobs on stuff that's pretty simple. I went through my toolkit one day, like what I carry is like a crash cart for working on guns. Let's see. Got a lot of background with 1911s and revolvers, man. That's been my mainstay. But yeah, for the purposes of this, I've seen a pile of gunshot wounds, like more than I can tally at this point. And anyway, so that's kind of me in a nutshell.
Sounds good. And last, but not least, we have Chuck. Legendary lawman, Marshal Chuck Haggard.
So started in law enforcement in the late 80s. I'm currently in my 35th year of law enforcement, if I did my math right. First 28 years were in Topeka, a very busy area. A lot of people think, it's Kansas and Dorothy and things like that, but Topeka had a very high per capita crime rate. We had a lot of dope, things like that. Our tactical team was busy enough that I could log being involved in 2,200 high-risk warrants and barricaded subjects, hostage jobs, things like that in a space of 17 years when I was on the team. So really busy. We have the only trauma center in our area, which was in my patrol district when I was a beat cop and then when I was a sergeant. So anytime there was gunshot wounds, that's in the whole area, they would either get the ambulance, the homie dump, or the life flight with the helicopter into that place. And if it was, that was one of those things where dispatch kind of screws you. If you didn't know where it occurred, since it was a pass, they would just send me because the hospital was in my area. Pertinent to this discussion, spent a lot of time in studying wound ballistics, things like that. Been a lifelong hunter. My dad was a combat veteran of both Korea and Vietnam, had been shot several times himself, which as a kid, that piqued my interest. Like he had a couple of very blatant scars on his legs where one day he's running for cover in Vietnam and he took 2 AK rounds through the legs and didn't slow him down any. So, that's the kind of thing that you're like, well, on the movies, the bullets make you fly apart or they push you through a plate glass window or something like that. So I started a big study of that. I was a very early member of the International Wound Ballistics Association that Dr. Martin Fackler started, also in the 80s. And that popped up after the 1986 FBI Miami gunfight, which really got us in the police world to scientifically studying wound ballistics. Friends with Dr. Gary Roberts, talked to him fairly regularly, and a few other luminaries in the wound ballistics world that I'm not sure I'm okay to mention, so I'm just going to leave it at that. And then done some work with Doc Williams, who is his class is literally tactical anatomy. He does an instructor course. Maybe an early plug. He kind of gave up on that class for about 10 years because he was sick of the training circuit, the kind of thing that all of us have complained about. But he's got another instructor level class popping up at Meade Hall in Oklahoma in May. So if anybody's interested in a deep dive in gunshot wounds and wound ballistics, might be something to look at, the class in Meade Hall. I'm privileged that he asked me to help him teach that class.
That's awesome. I'm thinking it might not be a bad idea to get a consensus with the panel on your guys' thoughts of Fackler and Roberts. Because if I recall correctly, our chat started with, I think it was Blowers was asking about something with it. And I remember reading some counter stuff to, I think it was Fackler. And I won't get into that. But just
are you talking about somebody trying to negate or,
yes,
or speaking negative of what Fackler?
Oh yeah, so basically trying to disprove what Fackler was presenting, talking about more about hydrostatic shock and whatnot, and trying
that's tends to be woo-woo horse shit.
Yeah. So I thought it would be important to establish, okay, this is where Fackler's at, and this is why, and this is where Roberts is at, and this is what we're basing a lot of.
If you get into the history of this, modern U.S. Army wound ballistics study, they took a deep dive on that after World War II, and they were doing all kinds of crazy stuff that you can't do anymore. Like they had a variety of guns that they could specify. Like you could launch a BB at a specific velocity, like 2,000 feet per second, 3,000 feet per second, 4,000 feet per second. And this would replicate, some of this was to replicate artillery fragments or like the pellets from a Claymore mine, grenade pellets, things like that. Because they knew in World War II, artillery, and World War I, artillery was the big casualty producer. Everything else was secondary to that. So they were wanting to do both how to maximize blowing up the enemy and then how to maximize fixing your own troops. So understanding, and there was a lot of mythology back then. Fackler talked about that at length, like how bad hydrostatic shock, which is what we're talking about is temporary wound cavity or tissue stretch. How bad was that? He talked about that in some of his journals, that surgeons were debriding these wounds, like if it was a rifle bullet, they're like, oh my God, all this tissue in this wound track is devitalized. It's all going to die. You're going to die of gangrene. We got to clean it all out. And they were crippling people and removing tissue that was actually still viable, that you could recover and, not lose like your whole thigh muscle or, wherever you got shot. So Fackler was a very experienced combat surgeon in Vietnam and took a study of a variety of things. Like he was one of the first ones to start logging some of the wound effects of the early M16 rifles with the M193 55 grain ball round, and the variety of effects of that. Because you talk to one guy, it creates devastating wounds. You talk to another guy and it just ice picks people. And he explained why that was. And then later on explained why M855 has a bad reputation and, scientific factors like fleet yaw, that sort of thing. Well, the Army thought so much of Fackler that he was the lead researcher at the Presidio at the Army Wound Ballistics Lab. Gary Roberts was one of his proteges. He was with the Navy at the time. I know the whole thing about he's just a dentist, but he's a maxillofacial surgeon. So what is that? Let's say you take an AK round through the face right about here, and a big chunk of this is gone. A guy like Gary Roberts is the guy that puts you back together and helps keep you alive, and then, lets you have a face again. So some of that is very detailed, very delicate surgery, and they screwed up, they can kill you. So for somebody to badmouth some of what Fackler's writings were, the guy had the entire collected experience of the War Department, the Department of Defense at his fingertips, had all of the research data, literally the guy that invented and proved wound ballistics gelatin. And they did a lot of live tissue labs, shooting anesthetized pigs, going over autopsies, looking at police shootings. He networked with people like Eugene Wohlberg in is that San Diego? Darryl, was that San Diego or Long Beach?
Yeah, I was gonna bring up Gene Wohlberg was at San Diego. Yeah, just to kind of pile on to Chuck, one of the things Fackler did is everybody thinks, oh, it's just this old dude who did gel stuff.
Yeah.
It's not. Back when that stuff was going on, Fackler had the ability to reach out into a lot of different places. And a lot of people think everybody's a firearms expert. That's a wide swath of people's expertise. Gene Wohlberg at San Diego PD's crime lab was a one of a kind. The guy was a top of the tip of the spear food chain ballistics guy. I mean, you could go into his lab and pull drawers of about every suppressor you've ever seen, of good stuff and street level stuff that was all kept as references. I mean, Gene was just an over the top encyclopedic gun genius. So guys like Fackler could reach out to Gene and say, hey, we're seeing this in ordnance gelatin. What are you seeing on street shootings? And a lot of, like, for example, a lot of the early 147, the heavy 9mm, well, San Diego PD had 64, 67 shootings with that stuff that Gene did the wound ballistics on. So you have somebody there who can give you input from that. Fackler had another guy working out of Cal State DOJ. When you have somebody at DOJ, they can go out and access shooting files and incidents that most people can't. I mean, the biggest problem is when we used to read in the gun magazines like, oh, so-and-so's looking at all these shootings, and I just throw the BS flag. At my agency, good luck at you going and looking at one of our shootings. Go to the front desk and tell them you want to see a shooting investigation. You're not going to see it. They're locked in the chief's office. Ours looked like literal phone books. I couldn't see my own shootings. And it was very limited who had access to those kind of investigations. So what you tended to get were cop stories as opposed to investigations. And then you also have to kind of call out the cops who are maybe a good homicide investigator, maybe a good crime scene person, a good detective. It doesn't mean they know jack diddly squat about bullets and wound ballistics and guns. That's what I did my job of. Our team was unique in that we actually brought in somebody not in that world to bring in somebody who's a legit firearms person to look at strictly bullets and guns, which is what I did, and then coordinate with the detectives, coordinate with coroners, investigators, because what I'm seeing is not what they're seeing. And it's a knowledge thing. And Fackler had the ability to bring all that in. And then that was carried on. I called Gary Roberts after every single one of our shootings. So I could do a shooting investigation, call Gary and say, hey, this is what I'm seeing on the shooting. This is relative to what we're seeing depth of penetration. Here's its performance. Here's what the bullets are looking like. I didn't call anybody else. I wasn't calling gun writers at magazines. I wasn't calling dudes who are hobbyists and gun buffs and stuff like that. I was reporting that information directly back to Gary. So it's going to a legitimate place. Funny thing, the first time I met Pat Rogers, I was with Gary going down to lecture at Camp Pendleton to a high-level Marine Corps unit on wound ballistics. That's not writing for gun magazines. That's like going and doing real stuff with real people. And so you have a very different thing. All these people have been brought up reading crap in gun magazines on the internet. And now it's even worse with the internet forums and social media and stuff like that, that a lot of these stories get almost blown out of proportion. But the reality is there are serious professionals who do this, and that's not an open circle. That is not a club that just everybody gets into. Guys like myself, Chuck, stuff like that, we were in that circle because we were working in busy places, seeing a lot of shootings, which was then getting reported back to the guys who were doing scientific lab work. It's a lot of like what Hearne does. You talk to the right people, you can get the data you're really looking for with researchers, as opposed to BS stories that you can't really track down, or it's a 17th time told story, or people don't know what they're looking at. And that was always a problem I saw with the law enforcement side. We had a shooting once, for example, 147 subsonic 9 traversed a guy running 40 something yards at night, dropped the guy, one and done. And the next day in the halls of the police department, I'm hearing how crappy 9mm is because the bullet just fell out of the guy. Yeah, it expanded to like 64 caliber, looked like an HST or a ad out of one of the Federal or Winchester catalog, and completely traversed the guy, left all the energy in the body, and was in the clothing on the outside. See, in our world, we call that perfect. In cop rumor world, well, it just fell out of the guy. It's stupid. They don't know what they're talking about. And, I'm out there measuring bullets and looking at recovered rounds and wound tracks and stuff. And these other guys are spreading, like 45, okay, whatever. So that's, anybody bad mouthing Fackler, they're forgetting that it's not just Fackler, it was Fackler's network was crazy. And especially at the time, because you got to remember, all of that stuff was getting done late 80s, early 90s. That was getting done when we were seeing shootings that were nuts. I mean, it was easy to find real life examples of stuff if you had access of where to look.
What you said kind of reminds me of an issue having any type of discussion online about this. We're talking about lifetimes, careers of research, and it's not something that you can just translate into a reply or a Facebook post. Yep, here's all the info. Oh no, show me facts, show me whatever. It doesn't work that way. There's so much information. And yeah, what you just said completely reinforces that.
I would just point out that they said and I heard are not authoritative sources as far as that stuff goes. Speaking of Fackler, I think one of the things that kind of kicked this discussion off was that Ella Fritz had shared this and they got some traction, but there was because Fackler was one of the founders of the International Wound Ballistics Review, and he published an article on it, I think the question was, has anybody refuted what Fackler said back in 1999, which I'm beginning to realize was a depressingly long time ago. But the exact quote from Fackler is, quote, "I welcome the chance to refute the belief that the pelvic area is a reasonable target during a gunfight. I can find no evidence or valid rationale for intentionally targeting the pelvic area in a gunfight. The reasons against, however, are many. They include," and then we're not going to go through the whole thing. I threw it in the chat, but he goes through and just breaks it down just, on a simple mechanical level, a physiological level, why pelvic shots are generally a very, very poor choice to stop, and particularly a poor choice with pistols, which is what most continental United States gunfights tend to be sorted out with.
Yeah, and here's the problem. I'll give you the history where this came back to rear its ugly head. So this kind of came back again. We had pretty much about that period of the late 90s with Fackler and now had enough information that most of that was refuted. And where this came back is global war on terror, conflicts in Afghanistan and Iraq, is our guys coming back from over there, particularly a lot of the special operations people who are having real good success with pelvic shots. I talked to a lot of these people and said, give me the scenarios where you're seeing successes with this stuff that's supposedly refuting what we're telling people to do in training. And inevitably, it was you had enemy combatants running across streets and getting smacked in a pelvic area by a belt-fed machine gun or designated marksman on a rifle, or even guys on M4s, whatever, who are shooting dudes through a wide area of their body while they're moving, is effective. But we're talking rifle ammunition, and we're talking about non-expand. I mean, it's the stuff designed to break stuff. You had very high velocity ammunition entering enemy combatants, because hitting them in the below the into the hip line was a wide, easy area to hit. It wasn't covered with AK mag pouches or weapons or whatever. And now the dude's laying in the street, and you get to shoot him in the head or in the upper
There was
torso.
a video. There was a video, if you remember back, like from 2003, where like this dude running across the street with an RPG gets shot in the pelvis and he drops. At which point, the U.S. military and about 20 guys magged up into him. But those aren't the rules of engagement that we're supposed to be working under, right, at least at this point in time, as far as this stuff goes.
So it was very effective in that, using those weapon systems in that environment, it was a very effective tactic, which is why it got spread. Hey, guys, when they're running across the street, shoot them in the hips, deck them, and then once they're on the ground wiggling around, they're real easy to hit at that point. Well, this starts coming back, and somehow or another that gets translated to that works with 9mm, and it doesn't. And it gets back into a world that we had already fairly well discounted as this isn't what we're seeing in actual live U.S. continental, constitutionally restricted shootings in the United States. It's not what we're seeing, and it's not a viable thing unless it's the only target you have, but it is not a response for a failure to stop. And all you're going to get, the best outcome you can possibly get, is if you put rounds into a chest and for whatever reason doesn't work, you go down and take a pelvic shot, is you now have at best the exact same problem you had a second ago, but now it's on the ground and they're now desperate. And that's the best outcome. Most of the time it doesn't hit anything of importance, and we now get to do an entire use of force program again, and we start getting into the excessive force things because we're getting more and more rounds being fired, which all have to be justified. And it just turns into a terrible problem.
Just so we can kind of define the problem we're talking about, John, you got that pelvet, the picture of your PowerPoint that you had handy?
You give me 1 second to share that screen. I actually found that video I was just talking about, but let me pop up to share for everybody. All right. And it funks with my Zoom. So let me know if does that pop up the pelvis now?
Yeah, I can see it.
Yeah.
So for everybody that's watching, I wish I had a pointer here, but when we're talking about pelvic shops or hips, a lot of people think that entire area, the entire pelvis, is worthy of targeting. If I had the photo here, I could show you an x-ray of a guy that took 3 rounds of a Hornady tap, 75 grain Hornady tap, into the iliac crest of his hip. And that's like the Dumbo ears part of the pelvis. That's what a lot of people think of as your hips. So that's the hip bone, but that's not load bearing. It's just kind of a bowl for your organs to sit in and things like that. So if I had that photo available, and I'll try to pick it up and dump it on the primary secondary website, the entire iliac crest of the guy that was in the gunfight with the Popo took 3 rounds of 75 grain tap, fairly effective 5.56 load. And that entire iliac crest looked like a snowstorm on x-ray. But what it didn't do was stop his mobility, stop him from gunfighting the cops. So one of my dudes back when I was with the PD shot a carjacking suspect, and it was from the front, hit about the area of, think of it as if where your left front jeans pocket would be, and it penetrated out and it exited out of his ass cheek. Well, if you look in the front of the pelvis there, there's big air gaps or hollow spaces in that pelvis. The bullet went right through that space. Never struck bone, didn't hit the nerves, didn't hit any of the big bleeders. It was literally but a flesh wound, to steal a Monty Python line. And is that your cursor, John? That's
It is. Yeah, I'm trying to use what Tiffany taught me, actually. So.
We need to start inviting Tiffany to these things, just for technical.
So what do you want to?
And yelling at us.
Up here, as far as like the iliac crest.
So actually, I was going to talk about point out the iliac crest. What we're talking about there. That's where the cursor is now, and on what I'm looking at, if you go down to the left, the big open space there, like in the middle of the pelvis. Yeah, that's where 9mm gold dot went right through this guy. He yelped, took off running, won the foot pursuit, escaped the area, and then ended up in a neighboring jurisdiction in an emergency room with a BS story on how he got shot. So the only very effective area on a pelvis shot is right where the ball of the femur goes into the hip. So when you get a hip replacement, that is the area that gets replaced. So that area of the quote unquote hip of the pelvis, and then the top of that femoral head, if that catches a good bullet, like a bonded 9mm 45, something like that, or a rifle round, dude is going to be on the ground right now. You can miss that and still hit the sciatic nerve, which is a big nerve, and have the leg go numb or go dead and stop working, and they can fall down, or they can hop around on one leg. You can hit the femoral arteries, which are prominently displayed there. They split at about the level of the wishbone at the level of the navel, and then follow the inside of the femur. So you can cut those, but that can take over a minute to dump enough blood pressure for the guy to start to pass out or become combat ineffective. So if you look at the two sides of the pelvis where the femoral heads are, where they meet the pelvis, that's the area that we're talking about where bullets can be effectively placed, particularly with handguns. So if you look at the target area that is effective, it's about the same size as what's effective on a headshot. It's just you got one of them on each side. So people think, well, I'll shoot at the pelvis because I got this big area. And there is some logic in that, because if you don't hit the effective spot, at least you're hitting meat, you're hitting something. but you're going to, like, I've heard the analogy, it's like knocking the transmission out of a truck. You're going to drop the guy on the ground right now. Physical part of the pelvis is those two ball and socket joints at the top of the femoral head, and that's it. It's a very small area. And it takes tight aiming. So when we're talking about pelvis shots, that's what's effective, particularly with handguns.
Yeah, and people want to talk about breaking the pelvic ring, and it's like, dude, it's a pistol. It's not going to break the ring. In order to break the ring, you also generally have to hit it in two spots. So there's a fundamental difference between running a Brennick slug through the pelvic area and doing it with a pistol. Kind of what just to sandbag on there. I've heard some people advocating for less well-trained people in like a church security environment going for the pelvis because it's going to at least have a tendency to stop the bullets, and the angle of the bullets are going to be less likely to be winging out the congregation. So are there a very, very small select number of scenarios where it might make sense to target the pelvis? Yeah, I'm not going to say never, but those scenarios are fairly small and very, very limited, especially again, once we're talking pistol bullets.
I do think that some of the traction that if you read your Jim Cirillo, and I was blessed to have Jim as a friend, and I could talk to him, ask him questions, things like that. He would much younger me, was a much bigger nerd, and he put up with my bullshit. But he told me over barbecue sitting in Kansas City one time that, of course, back then they didn't have jacket hollow points when he was on the stakeout squad. And they had a couple of scenarios because they were thinking shooters where they tell the guy drop the gun, the guy's running for the door. They want to shoot him before he gets out onto the sidewalk in the public. And they know their bullet's going to go all the way through because they don't have jacket of hollow points. They either had plus P round nose or plus P lead semi-wad cutter 38s, which will drill like 30 something inches in ballistic gel. And so what they took to doing was shooting guys in the ass cheek. And what they noticed was it was reliably, they would shoot dude in the ass cheek and they would tip over, they would trip and fall. And then if they were quick about it, because the dude would get right back up, if they were quick about it, now he's laying on the floor momentarily. So they have a safe backstop and they can unload on him with something like a shotgun. So Jim told me that was one of the tactics that they would do. If you put it in context of the when and the why and who was doing it, and the weaponry that they had to work with and the substandard ammunition they had to work with, it made a lot of sense. But a lot of people translated this into, oh yeah, shoot him in the pelvis, they'll hit the ground every time, like somehow be disabled. And nothing could be further from the truth.
That diagram, like 11 years ago, I worked a 17-year-old that showed up in the hospital with 4 gunshot wounds to the pelvic area. All 4 were with 45 ACP with Wolf ball, 230 grain ball ammunition is out of a Ruger P90 of all things. And where you had your cursor right on the edge of the hip, on the x-ray, it looked like the guy had a hip replacement because he had this like welded chunk of lead that had spalled out and surrounded the hip. And that was the only thing that actually disabled this kid. He took a round through the scrotum that permanently disabled his ability to have children, which given the circumstances probably wasn't a bad thing. But there were 2 that went through the iliac crest and missed the femoral and that, John, you probably know the term. What's the big artery that actually splits into the femoral? I'm drawing a blank, but yeah, right about where your cursor is there, it actually slipped behind that. And he had 2 through and throughs through the iliac crest. And the only reason the kid knew he was shot, we're having this conversation in the hospital. He's not under anesthesia. The only reason he knew he was shot was because he couldn't move his right leg. And that hard ball had just wadded up around the ball of his hip. And when they did surgery, it didn't even require a hip replacement. because it just formed this like molten cone of lead and locked his hip in place. The testicle shot severed both of his testicles. He never knew he was hit. He had a fourth round that went right into that void that Chuck was talking about from the front. And that's, he said, the guy was shooting at me and I took off running. He took the first one right in the hip and it just punched right out his butt cheek and left a little hole. Missed all the bone structure. The two that went through the iliac crest were just barely leaking blood. And the one that, like I said, the one that disabled him actually coned over his hip and physically disabled his hip. By that time, he was about 50 yards away. And he walked himself into the hospital. So and that was right at the peak of when I was seeing rifle really heavily invested in this whole, well, if you don't get effect from shooting high center chest, transition to the pelvis. And I'd been through a couple of rifle courses where they had targets laid out for that. And after seeing that firsthand, I was like, there's probably some bunk here that we're not, or some context we're missing. So it's my 2 cents on one of the two really bad ones I saw that way.
A question for you, Bryan, just from what I've seen, bullets through that iliac crest, that big wide part that looks like the Dumbo ears.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of like blowing it away or anything like that, what they look like on x-ray to me is if you put a pistol bullet through a piece of plywood, they just poked a hole in and out. Is that what that guy looked like?
Yeah. And he had like splintering on the exit. Yeah. Where, like you said, like plywood. The only time I've seen an iliac crest completely fractured was an accidental shooting. I worked with a guy that decided to cross draw appendix carry in 1911 with a 230 grain gold dot and managed to almost amputate his iliac crest when he shoved it in his pants at discharge. And he was literally being held together by his belt and his pants. When they cut his pants off, and I think a lot of it had to do with the contact with gas discharge more than it did the bullet performance. And you were describing the rifle round. It looked like snowflakes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it blew that chunk of his hip out well enough that we could actually physically see it. It was actually open. And he was in a great deal of pain, but he hobbled his way into the ER. I mean, he was obviously embarrassed, but and had a pretty debilitating injury. But even the orthopedic was like, we're going to reconstruct his iliac crest with a concrete substance. He'll be fine. So that was another one of those examples that I was like, no, I really don't see a whole lot of merit to this. But yeah, the plywood description on the entry wound and the exit wound, on the back side of it, there was bone fragment that had kind of retracted back into the wound. So when they took the x-ray from the other side, it didn't look like an entry wound. It wasn't just a clean hole. The one that actually took the ball of his hip out, or it didn't even take it out, it just immobilized it. You could see where the bullet had hit that and started to spall around it. And I don't know what Wolf Ammunition uses for a bullet, but it was a jacketed hardball, and it just fragged all over the hip and looked like something out of, I don't know, like Wolverine or something, where they've coated his bones with some type of metallic material. That's what it reminded me of. And that kid we were having a conversation while the doc was like putting his finger through his scrotum and seeing if there was, damage there, which kind of turned my stomach, but it wasn't anything that, had he been shooting back, that would have effectively disabled him other than his mobility. So my 2 cents there.
If I can chime in on one that is extremely relevant because it answered a lot of questions. We had a case, and this one was interesting because of my level of involvement in it start to finish, is we had a pursuit come out of a neighboring city. I was working air support. So we run out, prep the helicopter to jump into this thing. And it terminates at a hotel on the opposite side of the airport. We arrive overhead to a shooting in progress. And so saw the tail end of it. Land the helicopter, I go in and I'm working the investigation. So what happened was officers stopped the guy on a traffic stop. He throws an object out, points out the window with what looks like a gun, says, "I've got a gun." And the officers backed away from the car, which the guy took off. That initiated the pursuit. He foot bails in our city or crashes, and he's running down between a fence and a hotel. First officer, there's two officers behind him. First guy, he again turns around with a gun, says, "I got a gun, I'm going to kill you." Primary officer goes to grab his pistol to shoot the guy, and there's no pistol in his holster. Because what happened when he was bailing out of the car, his Glock 21 got tied up in the seat belt, ripped it out of the holster, his Glock sitting in the street under the police car. I use this case because it's got a lot of stuff in there, because I always use it as a force case. It said, if another officer told you to shoot somebody, but you don't know why you're shooting them, would you do it? In this case, he rolls up on the ground, screams at the officer behind him, and starts yelling, "Shoot him, shoot him, shoot him." And the officer behind him starts laying rounds into this guy, one of which went through the hips. And the guy rounds a corner, gets behind a semi, is pointing the spoon at him still, because this has worked a bunch, pointing the spoon at the cops and yelling, "I've got a gun," has got him out of two situations now. Third time must be a charm. That's when we went on scene. I was able to direct the officers to where he was hiding, poured a bunch of fire in him, and one of the guys ends up hitting him and right meloned the guy, and that was the end of it. So I go to the autopsy on this thing, and it was a pretty interesting autopsy because I've got some upper torso hits, I've got the rounds through the hips, and then this headshot. So I'm talking to the coroner, and the coroners, I always had a good relationship with them because they weren't used to having cops there who actually could ask bullet questions and vice versa. So I told the doc, and this is when Moss Ayub had been pushing all the pelvic shot stuff, and I said, "Hey, doc." And, meanwhile, I'd been trained by Mudgett, Helms, and Reitz, so I was on the other side of the coin, as you always go for the head on this stuff. Said, "Hey, there's kind of a controversy in police training world. You got one guy out there really pushing these pelvic shots to put guys down, and then another group on headshots." I go, "Hey, you do this every day. What's your thoughts on that?" And the coroner he just goes like this. He just goes, "This right here." He goes, "These pelvic shots didn't do anything. This is what killed this dude." And, again, it was a situation where, again, the guy's taking body shots, pelvic shots. None of it has stopped what he's doing until somebody parked a 45 in his melon. And these were all Glock 21s. They were all 45 Glocks. So, again, it's not a caliber thing. It's not this. It's not that. The whole thing came down to, for people to push these as a failure to stop response, in my view, is stupid. To push pelvic shots as, I have no other place to go. I want to, and this is an argument like Cecil Birch and I have a lot on how we prioritize this. Kind of the ShivWorks guy, a lot of what they're doing is the downward shooting from retention. A lot of that's being done to prevent over-penetration rounds from rounds exiting where they can hit somebody in those close quarter shots going through a body. So on the downward shots, you're pretty much assured the round's going, down through at a better angle. I was trained by the D-team guys, if you're in a crowd or something, you drop to a knee, take a headshot upward. It's a similar type thing. I totally get that. My argument with Cecil is I'd rather go to that as a secondary if I know there's people behind or a backstop issue, rather than go to that as the primary. I'd rather go through the center of the chest or the head right out of the gate, because I don't want to shoot more than I have to. And with a pistol, the only sure things are pretty much hitting in a grapefruit here. Otherwise, it's all a crapshoot. And so you have this stuff of people are teaching this as a failure to stop drill. The other thing is the body armor is raising its ugly head again of these are some kind of body armor responses. I'm going to tell you right from being there when it happened. When the failure drill was introduced, which started off as the Mozambique coming out of gun sight, which was rounds to the body, assess, and then go to the head if it's a failure to stop, modified by the D-team guys at LAPD, specifically Mudgett and Helms, as 2 shots to the body immediately followed in transition with a shot to the head. That is very hard to sell to police administrators who don't know anything. These guys understood it from being exceptionally experienced dudes at the tip of the spear every single day, being engaged in violence. Plus, they are very serious gun dudes and very serious shooters. They were the West Coast version almost of Cirillo and Allard at New York. Is their level of what they're doing. You couldn't really sell this, and their way of terminology was calling it a failure drill. It's a failure to stop a suspect, and we're going to drastic means so we don't pour a bunch of bullets in it. A lot of guys had to sell that into their police agencies for training as a response to, well, if they're wearing body armor. Well, it could be body armor, psychology, the amount of time it takes for an upper chest hit to bleed enough to lower blood pressure to get them to collapse. Whatever the reason, mass methamphetamine, Cape Buffalo psychology, doesn't matter. The terminology of a failure to stop is very correct, and the response to that of going immediately to the brain is a much better response than a failure to stop and then going to something that you're going to guarantee is not going to stop the problem. You might have mobilized the problem at best, but you're not going to stop it. So again, I think when you're looking at the experience level of the people who developed this, pushed this, the time it was developed, the time it was tested, the time field testing in conjunction with lab testing with serious experts, and the ability to do a lot of it. Again, it's not like Allard and Cirillo. It's not like Helms and Mudgett and Reitz and all. You don't have guys out there, Pat Rogers. We don't have a lot of double-digit shooters out there anymore, to go to for reference on this. And we don't have as much of the ability to have these experts who can then access that information into something like the wound ballistics labs that Fackler was running, or what Gene Wohlberg was doing. Sadly, Gene died, fairly early in the 90s. You lost, you lost a library in losing Gene because nobody could maintain his lab the way Gene had done it. So you had kind of a golden era of sort of about 1980 when this started through about 2000 of having a ton of information with all the right people working through the problems. And you had a bunch of people who were theorizing on this pelvic stuff that was able to get disproved through the people actually doing it, who were actually the ones being in gunfights, actually investigating these crimes, actually in autopsies, actually running lab tests versus having theories about it, or I've talked to, or, this is what I think based on my experience of never having done this before. So, again, this is, we learned a lot in that 20-year period, and it's kind of weird to see this now 20 years later and we're revisiting again is almost silly. Not much has changed.
Human anatomy certainly hasn't changed since then.
I'll just throw out one quick thing. I find myself horrified that I think we're about to defend Cecil, but part of that Shiv works working the pelvis is only at that one arm's length. The whole idea is that you're going to have a arm controlling or fending pretty much the suspect's solar plexus up. So that angled shot is just simply there to make sure you don't shoot yourself. If you look at that logical draw stroke, as soon as you can get two hands on the gun's flat and you're going to be working chest. That whole pelvis shot is just so you make sure you don't shoot yourself. It's pretty much the only place angle you can set up on the bad guy where you don't tag yourself. That's, I think, the rationale.
I absolutely understand it. And, Cecil and I have talked a lot. And then one of the good things that just happened recently is Cecil is now hooked up with Giles Stock. If you guys don't know Giles is a walking encyclopedia of everything we're talking about from an age a little before us. And it's learned that Giles is talking about doing some testing kind of on that, because Giles is sort of on our way of thinking. But now is going to experiment with some stuff involving what bullets are doing when they leave a body, velocity wise, performance wise, and stuff on the other side. So it should be kind of interesting with some of these modern bullets. It's a thing where we're at least we're having these discussions, at least with people qualified to have these discussions, if that makes sense. And, and like I said, if you got a backstop issue, I don't care where it is, you got a backstop issue that has to be addressed. So Cecil, we're in agreement with it in certain scenarios. It's not being used as a failure to stop, which is how everybody else is pushing it. It's being used to alleviate a backstop issue in which that backstop may be your own body or your own body parts. So again, completely understand it. On why they do it. The problem is a lot of people will see stuff on a YouTube video or a quick Instagram hit or something, and all of a sudden, this is the way to do it, and having zero context that this was discussed over hours and not seconds that they're seeing. So, as you guys know, Chuck, myself, and Cecil all teach together, so we're pretty respectful of each other's opinions on it, and where we're coming from on it contextually.
So one of the things I'd like to throw out is I kind of developed this over the years, like working with Doc Williams. He teaches it as part of his tactical anatomy course, but he teaches the targeting, what to look for, where to shoot, because it's a very small area. And then he teaches it as a tertiary target, and then very much teaches high mediastinum, where you're going for, a target about the size of a dude's fist, and then the ocular cavity so that you can get an effective headshot. Because, I know Darryl and I could talk, quite a bit of a podcast on how many times we've seen dudes shot in the head ineffectively. I've lost track of how many times I showed up on a scene and some dude's got a bloody rag on his head or a t-shirt or something. What happened? Dude shot me. One of my old chiefs of police shot a guy here and here, and both of them ricocheted off. So, effective headshots is a very small part of the grape as well. But what I developed over the years, and a lot of this is not going to be, we're getting deep into the weeds here on scenarios, but what we're talking about for like citizen self-defense, vast majority of police shootings, things like that, the vast majority of them still run into, especially self-defense, like Tom Gibbons' Rangemaster student database. You can still boil most pistol fights down into the proverbial 5 rounds, under 5 rounds or under, 5 yards or under, 5 seconds or under, and the old 3 rounds in 3 yards at 3 seconds has a lot of validity to it. So where I teach pelvis shots is obviously ECQC type stuff where I am physically wrapped up with another human being and I'm firing from a high two. I do the same thing that Craig Douglas teaches, Cecil teaches, and that is a means to an end to break contact so that you can put more effective pistol shots into the person, right? The other reason that I would teach or perhaps think about going to the pelvis is if you're in a Jim Cirillo situation, maybe you are overseas, maybe you're stuck with ball ammo, things like that. Possibility of that. Rifles, particularly at any kind of distance, that's a completely different thing than most of us are talking about. And then in a rare occasion, if you have pistols at a distance, so hips, like when people are running, people are moving. If anybody played football, if you're trying to tackle a running back, you don't watch his head, you watch his hips because the hips don't lie. The head will bob and weave, things like that. It's a lot harder to hit. Most people have trouble getting a headshot at something like 20, 25 yards, especially at a moving target. So my theory would be shoot for the pelvis if you have some reason to do that. Like, is the guy visibly wearing body armor? Is the guy visibly wearing a suicide vest or a potential suicide vest, something like that? Then, am I going to go at 20, 30 yards with a handgun? Am I going to go for the pelvis where I get a successful shot? And if I don't, at least I hit meat as opposed to shooting at the head. And that tends to be, it's either a good hit or it's an air ball. So when we're getting deep into the weeds of esoterica outside of the ECQC paradigm, when we're starting to advocate where pelvis shots make sense. I mean, it's so niche that you're getting into deep into nerd shit here, I think.
Yeah, and that's been the problem. Go ahead, John.
No, I said the only example I can think of where I can really think a pelvic shot would work would be a gunfight around an 18-wheeler, and you can see the dude underneath the trailer, and all you can see is his pelvis. By all means, fill in what you got. But again, it's just not a good general target. We're certainly not going to start there.
Yeah, I think that's the problem of what we're trying to address is this thing keeps rearing its ugly head as instead of the pelvis being the niche little, there's a few scenarios where it sounds like a pretty good idea, to being, oh, that's where we're going instead of the head or the head and the heart. And I get distance is going to be a thing, accuracy and stuff, but the reality is, is in the context of failure to stop, in the context of what can I do to deck a guy right now with a pistol, the pelvis is not on the top of my list of what I want to do to deck a guy right now. And so, it's just, it goes back to where do you put these things? And I keep seeing people trying to advocate for this. Well, for new shooters, for novices, for whatever. Again, those are not the people who are probably thinking, oh, well, I'm going to take off whatever's big and in front of me, and I'm going to go down to the pelvis. Those are the ones, if you can't make a headshot, keep putting it in the meat in the body. You're going to have kind of a hard issue to do some of this. So anyhow, that's kind of where my thing is this should not be taught, as a lot of people are advocating, as a primary means.
Yes, Lee.
I know it's anecdotal, but one incident in which I worked, in which someone took a shot to the pelvic area, his iliac artery was damaged. And when I arrived on scene, he was still conscious. He was still able to talk, tell us what had happened to him, etc. And had he been an attacker, he could have still been able to fight. He did not survive the wound, but he died 2 weeks later in the hospital because by the time he got to the hospital and they performed surgery, he had lost so much blood that the transfusions were keeping him alive, but he did not have enough of his own blood platelets in his body to clot. And he slowly bled to death over 2 weeks, period, in the hospital. And that has struck me tremendously. Whenever I hear this conversation on the pelvic girdle area, it's like, I know it's only the one instance in which I've seen it, but that one instance was that guy could have still been fighting, and it was very telling to me. And I can't point to a lot of anecdotal evidence from people who I know, and when that would straight shoot me, pointing to successes of pelvic girdle shots. They're all I heard about this one, or one happened so and so, but it's not Chuck telling me I saw it happen in this instance. It's not Darryl. It's not Warren. Bryan or John. It's none of you guys saying I've seen it happen. It's effective, etc. And unless I start hearing it from that type of source, I want to put it into the same context of these people that have these first generation farming videos on YouTube that I just can't look away from now. And it's all just theory and buzzwords.
Well, just think about that gunfight with those hood rats, and they were shooting each other, and one of them took one right in the spine. I mean, right below his shoulders. And yeah, that was all shut off, but he was still shooting at these guys. Now, how in the hell is a hip shot going to be better than a spine shot? So that's kind of my whole thought on the deal, is like, it doesn't even make sense from the get-go. This is the part that's dangerous.
I know we have problems with headshots as well from what a lot of us have seen, but it just was striking to me another instance in which I had an ER nurse in a class, and no matter what I called as far as the course of fire, she put all of her shots in the head. And so finally I asked her, I said, ma'am, do you understand the course of fire, what I'm saying? And she goes, yes. I said, well, when I'm saying like 2 shots to the chest, you're going to the head. And her response was to me, I've seen too many people in the ER who've been shot in the chest that were still fighting in the ER. I noticed she didn't put any shots in the pelvis.
Well, and it kind of goes back to that, Lee, when you're saying, I just haven't talked to anybody with any real world firsthand experience with success with this. And that's what I'm saying. The ones I have who have said, I've seen firsthand, and they're trusted resources who have seen success. It all started out with, we're on the belt fed, or it's on an M249 or a 240B, or I was on my M16A4 with the ACOG. They all start out like that. They don't start. So there I was with my 9mm pistol, and that none of the successful pelvic shot stories start with my 9mm. They don't ever start with this. Here I was with my Blaster 38. That those don't ever start that way,
Yeah, that guy over in Lufkin took one down with a pelvic girdle shot. Both shots from the 12-gauge double barrel. It's not what we're talking about here.
Yeah, and the other thing is just looking at hunting. Does anybody target the ass end of the deer? Okay, if I break the pelvic girdle of the deer, that'll work. That's like nobody does that. We call that unethical. I've started trying to describe what we're doing as we're trying to do the ethical shooting of felony criminal suspects, which is sort of the same as deer. We don't want to hurt. We don't want the animals to suffer, and we really don't want the felons to suffer either. The fastest way to get them to go down is a heart, lung shot or a head shot, period. That's it. That's where it's at. And, nobody goes out who's a successful, they're called vegetarians, or the ones, I kind of target the hips on the deer, the hindquarters is where I'm targeting on the deer. Okay, vegetarian, that's not working for you. It would translate to the hunting world as well if it actually worked, So unless you like chasing wounded deer for miles in the woods, that ain't going to work.
Yes, Bryan.
The only time I'd ever heard it advocated or anything like that was, my conversations with Jim Cirillo. But again, to contextualize it, the one guy Jim shot in the ass, that tipped the guy over. He hit the floor, and then Bill Allard filled him in with 3 rounds of double-aught buck. So I guess if you've got Bill Allard with you and he's got a shotgun, that, that might be a good idea.
And that's kind of what I'm talking about with kind of that really interesting age between about 1980 and 2000 is you look where we went with bullet design and development. Helms, Mudgett, and they called Scotty the baby. He was on the beginning. And I mean, those guys came from the age of lead 38, terrible performing ammo, into sort of just getting into the jacketed hollow point semi-automatic stuff, or at least big bore ammunition, to by the time we were into 2000, most of us were using extremely high performance ammunition. I mean, some of it's a little better now. I don't think it's much. I mean, even 20 years later, the step we took from 1980 to 2000 in bullet performance, from 2000 to 2020, there's a much greater difference between 80 to 2000 than there is from 2000 to 2023. And, we started seeing big differences in, for example, a lot of those headshots that we talk about where they're, skating off of skulls and stuff. Man, we stopped seeing that with really good high performance hollow points. A lot of that ended. You didn't get a lot of those kind of stories like we used to with guys getting hit with 158 lead round nose. It was a very different world, or a very different time in that 1980 to 2020 or to 2000 transition of, we saw huge gains in ammunition performance on pistols. And again, where did all that came from? Fackler. All of that was coming out of that when that Wound Ballistics Association and that group of people got together. We saw some of the greatest ammunition strides we've ever seen on what we want ammunition to do in that time frame, when that kind of perfect storm of shooting lots of people, having some very serious firearms people talking to each other, and then the development of the ordnance level gelatin that you could do some scientific testing on. And then you could go back to that, to those street shootings, and go, see, that was like the thing with the 147 subs is, okay, here's what we're seeing in ballistic gelatin. Hey, Gene Woolberg, what are you seeing? Well, I'm looking at 64 shootings with it. Here's what I'm seeing: depth of penetration, expansion, this, that, and the other thing. And we're starting to be able to put that performance together into kind of where we are today, where the gains now on bullet performance are not huge. Where we're seeing them now is on little bullets. We're seeing the gains now that we saw in 45 9mm 40 service grade ammunition that we saw from 80 to 2000. Now we're seeing stuff like nobody would have ever thought that 32s and 22s will do what they will do today. And that's the next step of where we're in a bit of a golden age with some of the little guns. I think we're just kind of continuing on with the bigger service calibers.
Yes, Bryan.
So all this talk about pelvic shootings, I don't know why this escaped me on the first round, but my dad is one of the few people I know that's had a very, very successful encounter and used 5 pelvic girdle shots to end a violent encounter. Chuck's seen the gun. Darryl's seen the gun. Darryl's actually held the shell casings, I think. But
yeah.
That was 140 grain spear. And when I debriefed him on my podcast about the deal, that was the only target he had available to try to save his partner's life from staring at the end of a Charter Arms 38. So, and he described it as, 1, 2, 3, 4, I start seeing effect, and 5, it was like the light switch went off. That was about the time that the guy registered, I'm being shot now. And he severed, which I sent the autopsy report to Chuck and Darryl. But one of the rounds severed the major artery that feeds the two femoral arteries. And apparently that is a pretty devastating injury, just interrupting the blood flow there. And that's ultimately what resolved the situation. And it was 140 grain spear jacketed 357 Magnum at about a foot. So, context matters, right? That just happened to be what was available. The other thing I was going to ask, because we got Hearne and Darryl and Haggard and all you guys here that are kind of training historians, around 2011, 2012, right in the middle of the peak of GWAT, I was hearing from people in some of my sources on the mill side that were saying, we used to train 2 to the body, 1 to the head, 2 to the body, 1 to the head, a failure drill. And then we discovered that was kind of too hard. So our response was 2 to the body, give the rest to the pelvic girdle. And I was wondering if any of you all had any insight on where that came from, because I just heard it in roundabout circles from former mill guys that I was still in contact with. So that's it.
First I've heard of that one.
Is that with pistols or with rifles, Bryan?
With both. And
the problem with pistols on the military side is the people who use pistols on the military side is such a small minority. And, those guys are the ones who can actually shoot them in most of those cases. But we had, and, you guys have seen a lot of my pictures. We had huge success with turning the classic 2-body immediate shot to the head, failure drill, training that to an automaticity level with our guys. We had fantastic results from that on the law enforcement side. So, I don't know what the mill guys are doing. I don't know if some of that's an ammunition related thing and a marksmanship thing, whatever thing. But, and, like I said, if you're shooting rifles, it's a whole different world. If you want to go multiple, upper torso hits and then go to the pelvis with a rifle, yeah, okay. It's not moving as much and it might be easier to hit. I get it. And again, if you're shooting rifle rounds, it's a whole different ball game on
the context
performance.
I heard it in.
Yeah, and that was, and like I said, that's sort of almost the opposite of where I was hearing it from the mill guys. Was we're using the pelvic shots to deck them, and then we're filling the body in when they're on the ground wiggling. They're much easier to hit that way. So they were using it to immobilize, to make an easier target for the upper thoracic shots. So
the 2 people I heard this from came from Fort Bragg. They weren't unit dudes, but one guy was a SIF guy and something else. And they were talking about, they were doing testing on moving targets in shoot houses. That was like the context of it. So whether it was pistol, rifle, subgun, didn't matter. They were like, we're finding that our time spent trying to train people to hit a moving headshot that's effective inside of a room distance was being hindered. So I can kind of see the context of, well, if now I put them on the floor, their head ain't moving around as much, right? So, so that kind of unlocked what I was thinking. And I don't know that was ever formalized or anything like that. This was just in conversations that I'd had 10, 12 years ago, right?
When we talked about this and from a psychological standpoint, one of the big shifts I've done lately is shifting from a law enforcement mindset to a citizen mindset on this. My goal as not in law enforcement is I don't need to capture it. By the same token, the mill guys got completely different end goals to this stuff. A lot of us are at the stage in life, or a lot of people we're training, we just need it to go away. We just need the crook to understand I'm not the wounded baby gazelle, and you maybe need to head back to a different watering hole. And the goals with that psychologically for the crook is they are not looking at a police officer who their level of fight, because they're trying at that point, as soon as a cop's involved, it's not being incarcerated, not losing your freedom. And for a lot of these guys, they're on their 732nd strike. So it's a little different performance expectations of you need to shoot it, stand on it, handcuff it, take it into custody. The crook's outlook on it is, with an officer, I'm losing my freedom. I'm losing my ability to earn. I'm losing all of the things I like in life. The only thing they're losing on a citizen is I don't get my robbery success today. And there's not as much psychological bonding to the victim at that point, if that makes sense, is all of a sudden getting shot in the face with anything or shot in the chest with anything from a citizen. The motivation is probably, in everything I've ever seen on the street, is vacating the scene to go do this another day or to get some, ghetto treatment or get dumped at a hospital somewhere else, as opposed to I'm going to finish this fight, die in place for my freedom, kill the cop, whatever. Like I said, it's very few that we see kind of the true Cape Buffaloes of the crook world in that scenario. We'll get them sometime in cop world. It's pretty rare that you're going to get a crook who just got shot in a robbery from somebody they're not expecting to get shot from, that all of a sudden is going to will up all of this, means to end these fights. And, another thing on the psychological that I think is meaningful, and I'm looking at it pretty hard now with sort of, because I'm doing so much with the minor caliber stuff, is when stuff hits bone is when you get those psychological stops. And that was one of these things we saw coming from an agency that shot 45 Colt. Man, you put big bore ammunition into bones, into femurs, into these large bones that transfer a lot of energy into that bone. That stuff is painful. That stuff hurts. A lot of these things when we're hitting soft junk isn't painful. It's world dependent on hydraulic loss or electric spark. Man, when you're hitting bone, that's putting pain in. That's putting a lot of pain in that a lot of these smaller calibers don't, it kind of goes down from the top down as to how much physical momentum pain you're going to see on the end of it. And it's the one thing I can relate kind of steel targets to is, if you want to see that bullet hit bone and stop, that's where the bing makes some difference, but otherwise it's not a big factor.
Well, Darryl, can I go ahead and log that in my Rook book for the retiree FTO program about the transitional mindset between?
Yes, that's part of your FTO program. Because you don't have to stand on it, take pictures, and handcuff it anymore. It just needs to leave you alone. And the best bet is if somebody else finds it a few blocks away.
John, you have something?
I was going to throw it here real quick. I was fortunate enough to do some contract training up with the Kentucky National Guard. Jim Higginbotham was in charge of that program for a long time. And I went through the instructor program there. And, their response to that was kind of different. What they figured out was they would send guys overseas, they'd do good work, and they'd bring that information back, and they started refining it. I know this is going to shock everybody here, but their major solution to those problems was simply to require higher standards of their shooters, right? What they found was if you work the center line with a rifle and spine somebody, those tended to work really, really well. So actually, I'm glad we're here. This was the actual, I don't know if I can get it in here or not. This is like the final version of that target they have. That's not a very big A zone in here, right? But there's a spine that ran all the way up. So what they found was if you shot somebody 6 times high in the chest with an M16, because again, there's a difference between doing this stuff outside and CQB. If you're outside, you have some time for the guy to go down and sort this out. But if the dude's 3 steps away, you need to burn him down pretty fast. What they tended to find was they would just work hard along that center line get something that banged the spine. And it's kind of like, I guess, the end goal of the pelvis, the guy ends up on the deck. But the nice thing is in the process of getting the spine, you've torn up a lot of really, really important plumbing and gotten his attention. They had some, pretty hairy stories as far as going into rooms and guys just soaking up AR rounds as far as that stuff goes. But again, running a rifle round through somebody's spine after it's gone through their, aorta tends to be a bit of a fight changer as far as that goes. So I never heard about the transitioning to the pelvis. They just, like I said, just came up with some pretty good demanding standards, and that that target that Jim designed is just it's still pretty good. And I think a lot of it just goes back to low training standards, and then when you start losing skill in the scenario, it just gets worse from there. When Jim always laughed, they'd have higher end military units show up at the National Guard base, and they're like, "Who shoots that target?" Well, our guys do. And it always seemed to work out pretty well for them. So. I'm a huge proponent of, working that center line. I think that's like when we go to pick targets, that's one of the few reasons the USPSA works is the USPSA is a huge target. It's like 66 square inches of targets, but it's only 6 inches wide and it runs right up the middle. I think that's why that target has kind of stayed relevant. You see it like, the VTAC guys use it a lot of stuff like that because all the important structures lie along that midline, which is part of the reason with the pelvis is that the pelvis as the target is one of the few times when this important stuff isn't on the midline. And, one of the things I've observed, I'm on my third year of like having my own shingle out and, I teach a lot of, bullet placement. I can tell you most people aren't used to looking at a 3D target, picking out a spot and actually putting good hits on it. And I do some stuff where I'll show you where your bullets go through and stuff like that. And we just don't train people to do that. And because we don't train them to do it, they don't do it very well. I can't imagine, what expecting somebody to pull off a good pelvis shot would be far worse than what I'm seeing with the chest work as far as that stuff goes as well. Some of the stuff does come back to training and the targets that you pick for this work.
So I got a question for you guys. Out of the panel that we have here today, who started the earliest? Is it Chuck or is it Darryl?
I was in the military in 82 and then was a cop when I was 87. Okay.
Darryl?
88. Yeah, January of 88.
Okay, so both
Chuck's
of you.
the winner.
So both of you, how have you seen law enforcement firearms standards and training from when you started to where we're at now?
Oh, God.
And this is just to continue on with what John just said.
Well, so go ahead, Chuck, because you're older.
I was going to say part of what I saw locally in a lot of places was whether you think it was relevant or not. Like when I went through, our qual was basically I forget what the table is. Brian will know that, but the PPC qual that went from 7 yards to the 25-yard line. And like we had a significant, out of 60 rounds, we had 18 rounds at the 25-yard line. Departments were still shooting out to the 50. I know Oklahoma City was still shooting at the 50, but our qual, it was 18 out of the 60 rounds are at the 25-yard line. Nothing was closer than the 7. I've seen when we went to semi-autos in the 90s, there were a lot of people who were having problems shooting, and they changed the course of fire and they brought in like a 5-yard line and a 3-yard line. And a lot of those people were like, oh, this semi-auto is so much more accurate than the revolver. No, dude, they moved all the rounds from like the 10, 15, and 25 to the 3 and the 5-yard line, And then we had the giant, not the B-27, but the other NRA target that my deputy chief at one point was a dude that he was a lineman for the Houston Oilers. He was like a refrigerator with a head or a Coke machine with a head, right? So I was arguing we needed a better target, and Walt Wattis, he's like, well, what are you talking about? So I held the target up to Walt. This dude's like 330 pounds. And I'm like, Walt, this target is as wide as you with your arms thrown in, right? we don't shoot at dudes that size of a black bear that often, so we need much more tight accuracy standards. So I've seen in a lot of places a real dumbing down of law enforcement firearms training. I network with a lot of guys, like Ella Fritz was telling me in Ohio. I think their farthest shot is 50 feet. They got rid of 25. There's a lot of departments. Like I know Boston, the last time I talked to anybody there, they only shoot out to the 15. This whole no cop left behind 70% qualification thing is just utter horseshit. It seems trite to say, I don't want to be like, oh, well, kids nowadays or anything like that. But what I've noticed is the guys who are good, there's a lot of them who are really good and have continued that. But like the lowest common denominator, I think, continues to regress in my observation in a lot of places because we're not holding people to standard.
I was going to say go ahead. As far as I know, the lowest post distance right now goes to Kentucky. My understanding is, you can have departments that have their own standards, but the Kentucky post only requires you to shoot out to 12 yards. That's not even halfway to 25. That's miserable expectations of performance with a pistol. And then we're shocked when people perform miserably with the pistol. I think it's important to have a standard that, anybody can pass. Now, maybe making 100 might be rare, but, we seem to have standards that anybody can pass without any work throughout the year. If you're basically in a nutshell, the quals are set up so that minimally confident people can show up and pass them with no warm up or work. And that's what the standards are.
Our agency, I came in kind of 2002, but we were still real heavily locked into PPC. And Chuck, the match you're describing is a modified service match, unless you shot back to 50. And but we lived around the 60 round match 5, which is, and they would modify the amount of rounds fired at 50 yards. There wasn't 24 rounds fired at 50 yards. There was a lot more at 25, 15, 7. Reloads under time, lots of reloads under time, lots of gun manipulation under time that has effectively gone away. And some of it, I think, for the better. But the one thing I've really been cognizant of is when we were locked into PPC, guys were putting more bullets on a-holes. The problem is the target selection in that era was horrendous. So yeah, we were getting hits on bad guys. They were just not in very effective places because we had all these generous scoring zones. And then fast forward, I think it was 2009 when they revamped the standards. We have 6 rounds at 25 yards. It's like 2, 2, and 2, 3 individual stages, and they're 5-second stages. And they narrowed the target zone up. The problem is there's no gun manipulation under time. And there's like this battle where they're pressing speed, but they're pressing speed at the stages and not requiring an accuracy standard that's very optimal. The Oklahoma State standard right now, you can miss every round from the 25-yard line and 1 round at the 15-yard line and still pass with a score or a passing score. And there's no penalty for, a lack of round accountability, which I have a huge problem with. Even though maybe the silhouette's a little more generous than the target scoring area, but we don't require 100% round accountability, and that bothers me. And then our target selection's better. Our time standards are a little, I don't know. They vary between way too narrow and way too generous. So, and we're now having to train people instead of training marksmanship like we did under the old match 5, which was, looking back on it, was a huge benefit because you had to have a high degree of marksmanship skill to pass that 60 round course with 5 rounds at 50 yards. Whereas we're pressing like the speed issue because we're being forced to by the time standards, and we're training people to pass the test as opposed to preparing people to be able to pass the test. If you guys tracking on my differentiation there, I'm sure, but yeah, that's the big thing I've seen. So we're having shootings that are way higher volume, way higher round counts, way less rounds on bad guy. And I think we got to take pieces of both of those schools of thoughts and try to smash them together to make something that's of decent standard. But I was pretty appalled when I heard we were getting rid of the 50-yard line. Well, my old range master at that time, he said the 25-yard line is the new 50-yard line. And I went, what do you mean by that? And he goes, that'll be the next one they try to kill. And I started seeing agencies, other states around us killing 25-yard line shooting away. And unfortunately, Oklahoma, the time standard is so short at 25 yards that it's almost unmanageable to somebody that doesn't possess a high degree of skill, where the rest of the course you could almost pass blindfolded. So
yep.
My 2 cents.
And that was all politics. It was actually designed, Chuck, by our mutual friend. But it was not his design. It was not his doing. He just kind of did the best he could to make it as well as he could. But that came from chiefs of police. Now, keep in mind, and this is what really is humiliating, is the security guard standard is they still shoot that 50-yard course, but the police do not, because the chiefs and the sheriffs didn't like their guys not getting through the academy. So we all find that embarrassing and humiliating. Now, we still shoot that course in the academy. We still make them shoot it, but they don't have to pass it. So it's just for orientation, which means, and they know that means you don't have to pass it. So we're trying to put some rewards and punishment and rewards for passing it or not passing it together, just something that we can do, because it's our own academy. We can kind of do what we want, but everybody still has to shoot that course. And what really sucks is right about that time in 2004 or 7, I can't remember which one when it switched.
07.
It was 07. The chiefs and some of the sheriffs were trying to push through a plainclothes officer course, which is, have you ever seen that, Brian? Okay, I used that for our off-duty course. I wanted to, but it was too many rounds, so I had to cut that down to 10 rounds. So I used basically that for our off-duty course. But it was 15 yards, you shoot a couple rounds, and you shoot a couple at 10, and then it's just easy because they didn't want to do that. Well, then the legislature ended up passing that you have to shoot that course anyway. But now we got, this ridiculous course that nobody can use. Yeah.
And the guy Chuck and Warren were referencing, when that all came to fruition, man, we cussed him. Like, we loathed like the fact he
not
was
his fault.
And then fast forward a few years, I start hearing from the inside that once I understood like what his vision for the qualification or the state standard was, I was like, man, that's brilliant. Yeah. However, it got torpedoed by the politicians, and I think he bore a lot of the brunt of that. So, yes, I did speak his name in vain a number of times, and I will repent of that henceforth.
Yeah, not his fault. And he actually added some stuff that's kind of useful into that. It's almost like a drill now. Our qual course is almost a little bit like it has some qualities of a drill in it. So, and I think that was kind of part of what he was trying to at least salvage something out of that mess. But it was mostly chiefs and sheriffs. He didn't like their folks not passing. So by golly, you guys are going to make this easier.
When I went to go ahead, Joe.
Good. Well, just to tie in kind of what Warren was just saying, and Chuck, the difference was, so when I started in the academy, we started like 160 something people in the academy and graduated 40 something. That's unheard of now. That's absolutely unheard of. And we shot a PPC based course out to 50 yards. So then going to my agency, because we didn't have an outdoor range, we called on B8s at 25, 15, and 7, and the shots at 15 and 7 or 15 and 7 were done both right and left-handed on a B8. Now we had 5 minutes at 25 yards, but you were expected to hold black on a B8. You know, we have a lot of people who can't do that now. And you didn't get through the academy if you couldn't sort of shoot. Because like I said, we were shooting to 50 yards in the academy. We were shooting all PPC based stuff. And they didn't feel bad about washing people out for not shooting. And then I remember, you know, you pull into the parking lot of the police department in the late 80s, and there is there's NRA stickers on a lot of the backs of the cars. You don't see that anymore. So you had a lot of shooters, and they were held to a bigger standard. Kind of when we went to the semi-autos, you started seeing these courses change. And like Chuck was saying, all of a sudden you're shooting at 3 yards and 5 yards, and they're going, see, everybody shoots better with these semi-autos. And it's like, they're shooting at half the distance on everything that we were doing before. And now they're using great big ass targets too. So you've seen this kind of really weird change in stuff that, you know, it's reflective. The guys were really good on the marksmanship side. They sort of sucked on the tactics side. And that's a lot of what's changed. And that's what we kind of adjusted to. Luckily, I had good guidance. I just stole the LAPD qual course to start using that for my SWAT guys. And then we put it in for everybody. But those were very difficult and a lot at 25 yards. But even talking to Scotty Reitz at LA, you know, as soon as they got rid of shooting at 25 yards, their field performance went way down. So what they're doing is lowering a lot of these standards, because we can't afford to lose people in the academy. I mean, Larry Mudgett was brought into the LAPD academy from SWAT as a firearms instructor because they were losing so many people in the academy to shooting that they're trying to have a more diverse department. Okay, well, a lot of the diverse people couldn't shoot or had no background. And a lot of times you didn't have the instructor level to get them to where they needed to be. Well, now kind of instead of, hey, let's bring in some really great instructors into these academy environments to better train people, it's become much easier to go, hey, let's just lower the standards so blind people can pass it. And then, you know, here we are. And so there's been some huge, huge changes over time with expectations and how important shooting is. And you know, like they said, yeah, we got some people out there now who, because they have so many resources available if they want it, to shoot exceptional if they want to take advantage of that, just like kind of we did. But that's few and far between, because now, I mean, kind of back in our day, the worst shooters would be considered kind of real good shooters now, where now you have some exceptional people because they have access to outside their agencies on some really exceptional people, or few and far between exceptional people. But for the most part, they've lowered the standards so low, and they keep telling these officers, oh, well, it's the state minimum standard. So they think, oh, I'm great. And then they get the reality of a real world shooting, and they are so ill prepared for that they turn these things into little disasters.
1999, when I went to the academy, we shot a 50-round course that had 6 rounds at 25 and had 18 rounds at 15. But it was kind of a modified PPC type thing, not on a bullseye, but like the times really weren't stressful. 2004, the state replaced that course with a 30-round course that has 4 rounds at the 25 and 4 rounds at the 15, using the same target that was used on the previous course. While the marksmanship standard dropped significantly, it was actually probably a more relevant course than what we were shooting before. That course has since been monkeyed with, and now is the most polite term that I can use to describe it is completely grabastic. And there's no relevance to it. The hardest thing about the course is remembering what to do with the 7-yard line. Now, I made a demo video of the course for our guys so they could watch it and see it, what it's like. And I screwed up at the 7-yard line. And there's just no relevance to it. And that's, to me, again, that's a bigger problem than pure marksmanship standards. And what we see is people, they teach to the test, as was mentioned earlier. And as long as they, you shot an 80 or an 82, you're good to go for another year. And that's accepted.
Hey, Lee, how much is, what are you seeing? The other thing that comes up is frequency. Mm-hmm. So when I started, we called monthly, which is unheard of now. A lot of places have gone to annual. So again, you're cutting down how much they're shooting, you're cutting down where they're shooting, you're cutting down whatever. And then, like for our people, if you go to annual, they're shooting, a 1/12 of what we shot before, and I've always found frequency as a huge issue with this. The
state standard in Georgia, this has been in place as long as I've been a cop, was you must shoot a qualifying course with your weapon once per calendar year. And so what that means is I can shoot January of 2023. I can push qualifying again until December of 2024. And so you could actually have a 24-month time frame without drawing the pistol. We developed some pretty high standards at our sheriff's office because the post rules do allow for you to shoot a course that meets or exceeds, and we chose exceeds. We built up a pretty high level and a high expectation and built up a training cadre to carry that out. The 1033 on the casino drill is now our sheriff. Mm-hmm. And I've got 3 other guys that are 12 in the 12-second club. 2 other guys now, one of them moved on. And so that was our instructor corps. And so we were getting people up to a pretty good standard. And then sheriff retires, new sheriff comes in, there's fruit basket turnover amongst the whole agency. And, all of that went away, just fell apart. Nobody did anything wrong. It just inertia, caused it to fall apart. And we had a training meeting at the end of last year to set up the training for this year. And the sheriff asked me in front of everybody, he said, are our pistol standards right now as high as they were when I took office on 1/1/21? And I said, no, Sheriff, they're not. And so he decreed right then that anybody that shot below an 85 on the qual course would have to go through remedial. But they're only mandated to come to 1 training class per year. And it's like, well, I can't get them to that level with 1 training class a year. Or to a level that we both think is going to be acceptable. I can get them to an 85 on the course, but I don't think an 85 is where he wants them to be. And that's a whole other, can of worms and everything, but it all comes down to operational things too. Somebody's still got to answer the 911 call. Somebody's got to work the wreck. Somebody's got to answer the alarms, etc. And we're just now getting back to full staff after a couple of years. And that'll last for a day.
You're talking about.
I do believe frequency is a bigger deal than everything else. Go ahead, John. I'm sorry.
Yeah, make sure I nerd out on recency here in a second. We're talking about the standards. I have it on pretty good authority that like one of the local big city PDs that got in trouble recently. If you go to my the business website on Facebook, there's a pretty good detailed story about the training expectations and what it did to the department when they lowered those standards. I have it on pretty good authority that you cannot fail that academy based on firearms. You will stand there with an instructor until you rub the lucky rabbit's foot and shoot a passing score. As soon as you can have that one documented shooting score, they're going to graduate you from the academy and you'll be a problem shooter, for the rest of your career. I think there's another interesting observation as far as, the standards. For years, the FBI, for their firearms instructor class, you had to shoot that bullseye course. And say what you will, when you have to shoot, 25-yard bullseye, it sorts out the people who can press the trigger without disturbing the sights and who can't. I have it on good authority that the FBI no longer requires that classic, 260 two-handed on that instructor class. They went to a slightly different instructor standard, basically being you have to be able to keep everything in an 8-inch circle out to 25 yards, but that's still not going to be the same thing. Why did they get rid of that portion? Because nobody could, we weren't, my take is that pool of shooters as they flow through, as the standards got low, now we're kind of seeing that, that big snake thing going through the anaconda. We've gotten to the point that even the FBI is having to lower their standards for who they consider police firearms instructors because the quality of law enforcement training is just so poor overall. It just seems to be going everywhere, and it's I don't know of anywhere where it's getting better. As far as the frequency, dude, recency trumps just about everything when it comes to shooting, and most people don't appreciate how recently you really want to be shooting. I would say this: if you don't have the gun going off in your hands once a month, it doesn't have to be a lot, like 30 rounds once a month will take you a long, long way toward going there. The nerdery stuff tells us that there's, for some reason, departments will brag, hey, we shoot every quarter. Well, that's great, except that there's a huge difference between training every 2 months and training every 3 months as far as performance. So, I look at it like this: you need to be handling the gun on a weekly basis, doing some kind of dry work. You need to do a little bit of live fire at least once a month. If you have to skip that, okay, you can skip it once, but you can't do anything beyond that and expect to perform reasonably. And that's just on like a mediocre standard. There's some research supposedly out there on a higher end military unit, and they were finding that they had to shoot every other week to stay good. They basically had to fire 50 rounds every week, or they could get away with 100 rounds every other week, but no other combination. They couldn't, fire 400 rounds every month and have that work out. It was 50 rounds a week, 100 rounds every other week to maintain the degree of performance they wanted to have with their people. So, the idea that you can shoot a qual, once a year, or in Lee's example, every 24 months and expect reasonable performance out of people, that just doesn't match with any of the human performance research that is very well documented out there.
But dots are going to fix it.
That's right. If I remember correctly, in early ModCast, Pressburg said that that's essentially what he did to get to be a good pistol shot. And it was constant training, and it might have been like 50 a week. Actually, it might have been daily.
At my agency, I caught a lot of flack over the years for talking about, firearms training, how it was kind of poor, I guess. I don't know that I don't want to be like caustic about it, but I've never really had a problem with our recruit initial training. It's pretty thorough compared to other, the state or the state academy or some of the other surrounding agencies. It's actually a pretty good immersive program. The problem is in sustainment. And, I can remember for a long time of going through biannual qualification of 50 total rounds for the year. And then the COVID years down to one a year, which is the state minimum. And I don't have a problem with the training, so to speak. It's just the sustainment doesn't exist. And that's one of the places that I have a real rub with, some of the training stuff going on in my area here. And rather than look at sustainment solutions, it's let's implement a new gadget. Let's implement a new, fighting around vehicles or something that just the raw sustainment of marksmanship skills just falls off. So dots are going to fix it.
Exactly.
Right. But I'm not qualified to have an opinion on that, Bryan. So
Nor am I. So
Because you guys don't
Because
like
now
dots.
Lee hates dots.
yeah, that's what the internet tells us. Tells us all.
I saw it on the internet.
Yeah, I spend an
Doesn't matter
awful
what-
lot of money on them for something that I hate.
Same
Yeah,
here.
you know, and on that topic, with a historical perspective, Mark Fricky brought up the point that when we had the revolver to a semi-auto transition, you know, there was all the transition training, and during their immediate transition year, the qual scores went up with the pistols. Well, because they went through a transition class and then shot a course at the end. Over the next years or two, the scores went right back down to where they were. And now, you know, now we're slapping optics on the tops of guns. We're making people go through a transition course to carry the optic. At the end of that, they shoot a qual course and, oh, the scores are higher. Well, then they quickly regress the further away someone gets from that transition course. I've seen it in my own agency where one of our guys, who was not a bad shot, but not a real good one either, went out and spent the money on a dot, went through a transition course, shot his highest ever qual in the transition course, comes back to the agency with me 2 months later and fails his qual. And we had to go remediate that and get him back up to standard. And, you know, we can't throw gadgets at the problem. Now, and before everybody gets mad and the internet gets mad at this, scores should be higher with a dot. They should, because it makes the shooting at the 25 easier. It does. But none of it's a magic bubble. None of it. It takes dedication. It takes, you know, the will to go do it. It takes the agency. And guys, I was an agency head. I had the power to do pretty much whatever I wanted within budget. And I know all my type A training brother, and you always want to scream at point their finger up at the guy in the front of the room. But guys, when I couldn't make it happen to my own satisfaction, I had a 95-man agency. I couldn't imagine trying to do it with a 1,500-man agency. And it took me developing a training cadre to help carry that out. And once that cadre kind of got moved around and jumbled and some moved on, it's back down to pretty much an impossible task again.
boy, we are. So about those psychological stops, guys.
Well, Darryl kind of talked about it with hit and bone.
Well, speaking of psychological stop, I'm going to have a physiological stop here. It's on the right coast for me, and I'm going to vanish.
So before you do,
Mhm.
where can people find you?
That Weems guy on your podcast dial or Facebook, and First Person Safety is my business. You can find me at firstpersonsafety.com or on Facebook. The show has a dedicated Facebook group where there's some pretty good discussion and stuff that goes on. So just search for That Weems guy and get into the group, and you can see me rant about YouTube farmers and the like.
And red dots?
And dots, because I hate them, according to the internet.
Clearly.
Yeah, according to the internet. Yeah, even though I'm signed up for 2 more dot instructors classes in the next 3 months and possibly going to a 3rd one. But oh well. Maybe one day I'll have an opinion.
Maybe. Awesome discussion, though. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, guys.
I think Chuck's got a bail as well.
Oh, he's going to turn into a pumpkin. So with that in mind, with people leaving left and right, and I got a text from Darryl, his internet went out. Yeah, let's get some final thoughts. Where can people find you and all that kind of stuff? Chuck, if you're going to turn into a pumpkin, let's get you taken care of first.
Yeah, I gotta get up at 4:00 in the morning. So, yeah, I've talked about it earlier in the podcast. If anybody has a deep interest in something like that, Dr. James Williams teaching his tactical anatomy instructor course at Meade Hall in Oklahoma in May. That's going to be a good time. We're going to cover wound ballistics, bullet performance, targeting, how to train for targeting, his tactical anatomy information, why you should hold to very tight accuracy standards, things like that. So that's something I'm privileged to have him ask me to help him teach the class out. Looking forward to that one. My company's Agile Training and Consulting, www.agiletactical.com. Going to have a pretty busy training year. A bunch of us on the panel will be here at TacCon in a couple of weekends from now. And then Darryl, Cecil, and I will be in Utah teaching our EDC counter robbery class. We've got, I think, a couple more of those coming up this year. I've got other classes up on my website, so easy to get a hold of if anybody has a need for any of that.
Yeah, buddy Josh said, they're coming out. I'm like, oh, that's right. I need to sign up. And then I realized, I can't, because of TacCon and some other stuff. I can't take off all that time. It's too close to TacCon. Another time. And we still need to do an episode on de-escalation.
We do. That's a good subject.
Yeah. Cool. John, what do you have for us? Final thoughts? Where can people find you? All that kind of stuff. They can find you in your she shed.
Hey. It's a work in progress. Okay. Feel like the character of the sheriff in The Unforgiven, where they talk about how his house doesn't have a single square angle in it when they go to tell him that the bad guys are in town. That's kind of my carpentry level skill. But just closing thoughts. We're not saying never shoot somebody in the pelvis. It's just going to be a very, very rare case, and you're going to have to really have a good context for it. Everything works every once in a great while, but for the most part, shooting people high in the torso to high accuracy standards, working the center line is going to be about the best recipe for anything out there as far as that goes. If you want to actually practice that, I literally have a class called Cognitive Pistol with Tactical Anatomy, and we watch people get shot in the classroom. We go out, we shoot 3D targets. We do anatomy. Like if you ever wanted to be a CSI guy and run the rods through the guy and figure out the angles and stuff like that, Warren got subjected to that course along the way. It's a pretty good way to get this material squared away. My training company is Two Pillars, Pillars training. Best place to find me is on Facebook. There is a Two Pillars website as well. You can find me on Eventbrite. I've got to update some of the Eventbrite classes. I've got one and only one shooting slot left in the class in Culpeper, Virginia. For family reasons, I don't travel that far, so there's literally one shooting slot left in that September class. I'll be at Meade Hall Range in October, Tennessee in November. I also have a magazine article coming out. I think it's going to be in Recoil's Off Grid, and I think their April edition. So I'm starting to do a little bit of writing as well. So hook me up on the internet, look at the Facebook page. If you have any interest in crime and the criminal justice system not working, I find it very easy to regularly post newspaper articles, stuff like that, on how the criminal justice system is breaking down. And that service is available at Two Pillars Training on Facebook as well. But thanks for having me.
Thanks for showing up, actually. To be honest with you, it was unexpected. So we had that big chat and you showed up and I'm like, oh, nice.
Dude, there's been a lot of logistics to get me to this point, I can assure you. And the she shed was the key. The fact that I'm able to talk out here until late wee hours, and my wife does not have to keep the 2-3-year-olds from breaking into the office to see daddy is huge. Yep, I can assure you.
Nice. Yeah. Thanks for joining us.
You never hear anybody say about John. Nice.
Yeah. And John and she shed, those two.
Well, that I could see together. It's just John and nice.
Mm-hmm. So Warren, what do you have for us? Enid PD's hiring.
Enid PD is always hiring, and we're starting to see that pendulum kind of swing, or at least my buddy Mike Wood calls it the ratchet. It doesn't ever come fully back, but the pendulum's kind of swinging back. We're getting some applicants here and there, and getting some decent folks wanting to be cops. That's cool. That's a good thing. We're dying for that. My final thought is, forget about doctrines. One thing that Lee really hammered home for me at his class down in Georgia was forget about doctrines, forget about your favorite ballistic guy, your favorite wound ballistic guy. study everything. Study the stuff you think is garbage. Study absolutely everything. And I mean, we'll have one guy who's a friend of mine who's doesn't want to be talked about anymore in public, but he attended 200 to 300 autopsies and was a homicide detective in a very busy place. Why would we not take and listen to that guy a little bit?
Yep.
Or a lot, you know? So study everybody, learn as much as you can, and we're never going to figure this thing out ever. Not to the extent we want to.
Yeah.
You can find me at defensivetrainingservices.com. Our home range is just about back up and running, so we can start doing private classes again here in Enid, just north of town. And recently started writing for American Cop for our buddy Eric Gelhaus. So I got I think my second one came out a while back. So I'm going to be having about one a month in there. And then of course I'm always at Police One, trying to be the
voice of reason
there. trying to be the voice of reason. I do some sponsored content there. Believe me, I do turn down a whole bunch of it, and I only take what I want. I only take the good stuff, and try to always throw a lesson in there, no matter what we're doing. If they got a good product, like Brink's got a good drone product I'm going to be writing about. That's cool. It's a good thing for cops, but I'm also going to be throwing a couple lessons in there. I'm like the Baptist preacher at the funeral or the wedding. You know, nice. I got you there. You're gonna have to get a little bit of scripture with it. So that's where you can find me, and hopefully on Brian's podcast, because he keeps blowing me off.
I gave up. I'll
get both you guys. We'll do a round table. Ooh, I almost said something that could have been peeled out.
No, it would be a triangle. It would be a triangle table.
A triangle.
Call it a triangle table, and not a
not
discussion amongst three people. And I almost abbreviated and made it awkward for everyone. So no, I've been wanting to hit you up, man. I've had a busy couple of months here.
Well, you're getting your hips amputated, so.
Yeah, I'm hoping they find a brain
in your hips. I guess it's your turn to talk.
Well, before I'm forgetting about it, if you're in law enforcement, Buford Boone, who was in charge of the FBI wound ballistics lab, literally for 15 years, he does a free class every February in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. If you get a hold of the Tuscaloosa PD, great training sergeants out there, that is literally a free class to help you with a lot of this material as far as this goes. The other thing I was trying to remember, because I'm sure that because Lee forgot to mention this, I'm the only one, is that we have our upcoming cognitive conclave with Gelhaus and I, and what I'm going to be teaching is the block on tactical anatomy is what I'm going to be teaching. So if you're on the East Coast, that's another great way to get that. That registration is on that Weems guy would be the best place to get that as well.
Awesome. So Brian, with a Y, what do you have for us?
Man, that whole little phrase has taken a life of its own. Anyway, well, let's see. Between medical appointments and all other manner of life stuff that I've got going on right now, I'm not doing any open enrollment this year unless it's like somebody requests it. Mm-hmm. So I got TACON coming up. I'm doing a block there. Tom was gracious enough to invite me, and I appreciate it greatly. Due to, some scheduling stuff and whatnot. So doing 2 4-hour blocks there in, let's see, in September, I got the Guardian conference in OKC. I'll be doing probably 3 or 4 blocks there. And then I'll be teaching at Revolver Roundup in November. I feel like I just went over this. Oh, because I was on episode 333.
That's right.
That's
and this is 334.
Like, feel a little deja vu.
Deja vu.
Other than that, I'm officially going to punch out here in about 40 days, I think. Is
now from life or
no? Okay, no, from police work.
That's 45 days.
Yeah, essentially. Yeah, I got you 40. It's 9 days anyway. But yeah, I'm gonna retire here. I actually kind of formalized the date today, so it's just a matter of sending the paperwork in and getting all that squared away. And
But you're so young.
Process. Well, I tell people I'm not retiring so that I don't have to work. I just have some other opportunities right now that I need to jump on. And, Oklahoma is a 20 and out state, and I've got over 20. So it's time to go. And like I said the other night on episode 333, I started recognizing within myself that I was turning into the cop that I didn't like when I was a new cop. So it was pretty well time to make a change. But aside from that, I'm right now, since I'm hobbled, I'm doing a lot of like tabletop Patreon stuff on the Patreon page. I'm still trying to get a podcast out every week or every other week. And then VA appointments and pension appointments and doctor's appointments. Yeah, it's a fun time right now. But yeah, after all that opens up, I do have a website that is currently not maintained, and it's called slapthetrigger.com, tongue in cheek.
Does it say tongue in cheek?
No, not really. Well, I think it does on the
tongue in cheek.
On the description on the website, and it's kind of a work in progress. I also own the domain jerkthetrigger.com. So if anybody wants that one, call me. I'll sell it to you. But the belt company's taken up a pretty good sizable amount of time right now. So just on the logistics, I'll be doing the NRA annual meeting next month. I'll be up there with Concealed Carry Inc., Jacob and Riley, and I'll be up there repping for the belt company, just doing the in-booth hug babies, pass out stickers thing from a stool, because I will likely be recovering from a hip surgery.
Yeah.
Let's see what else I got. Yeah, it seems like there's something every month. I'm doing a revolver class with Tom Givens, kind of a private deal.
Just the two of you, no one else.
Well, it was kind of an invite only thing that Tom agreed to do, I guess, that I maybe shouldn't even have said anything, but
oops.
But then Andy Stanford's coming to town. We're doing a low light block or something, or coaching block, something to that effect. So it's always something. Like every week I'm prepping for something. Oh, are you going to be at that?
Yeah. At Tuttle.
Yeah. At the farm. Have you ever been there?
I'll see you there. I got an invite from Steve Moses and bringing a buddy.
Cool. Have you ever been to that facility?
I have. It's awesome. Kyle hooked me up with that. Yeah, it's great.
I've been teaching out there. I started doing open enrollment out there like 5-6 years ago. But and
Kyle used to work at Enid. He was an EMPD guy.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I forgot about that.
So we got connections there.
Yeah. So let me think. But other than that, I'm staying busy, but as far as like open enrollment training, I ebb and flow on that stuff. And it's something I'm passionate about, but I just don't have the logistical time to devote to it right now. And I kind of have I can't even talk about it, the opportunity coming that if that goes through, then I probably won't be doing any open enrollment training for the foreseeable future. So come to TACCon, Guardian, or Revolver Roundup if you want to hear what I believe on the range, as opposed to just in the virtual format here.
Anybody who goes to TACCon, even if you don't stay at the hotel, go hang out at the hotel, because we take over the lobby and it's just our folks, and there's 100 of us in there, and there's so much free learning that goes on right there.
Oh yeah.
It's a blast. Absolute blast.
I've never stayed there before. I stayed there for a Justin Dial class, and I was like, I will never stay at the other place again. I'm coming here.
Yeah. I don't even stay there. We stay in our RV down the road. We just Uber back and forth so that we can go hang out with everybody and go back to the bus whenever we're tired.
Yeah. I'll be there.
It's a good time.
I'll be there Friday night, depending on what Darryl was talking about earlier with the team girl power. If they have something on the agenda, I won't be,
Yeah,
but
you'll be wherever you're supposed to be.
there will be an agenda. So
That's awesome.
Well, awesome discussion tonight. Really good one. Yeah, I think this is going to be one of those episodes people are actually going to listen to. We'll see. Side note, I received this Model 29-3, shot it for the first time. We shot a handful of Magnum rounds, mostly 44 special. And guess what I just found as I was sitting here? There's a little screw right about here. And it was loose.
Yoke screw back tip.
Yep.
What?
Yeah,
that doesn't happen.
I sent you my load data in a private message for loading a special load in a 44 mag case.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've had is that a mountain gun or is that a Lou Horton or?
It's a Lou Horton.
Oh,
So when we were recording at the end of 333, I saw this on Gunbroker and went, I'm going to get this.
I noticed you were kind of devoted elsewhere for
He bought 3 guns during this episode.
Yeah. It's what you do.
The 3-inch end frames, dude, that hurts so bad. I got to have more of those. I've only got 2. But one of them's a 1980s 24. And
Does that
man,
count?
Is it a 3-inch end?
627.
That counts.
Okay.
we're going to toddle into the revolver rabbit hole for a minute.
This is the other episode that we were talking about, is doing the guns for fun.
That's right. We still need to do that.
Yeah, don't forget that one. That's gonna be the best one ever.
It will be, because guns are fun.
Yeah, at one time. So here's a funny cop story. At one time, like one of the distributors in the 90s got a bunch of those in, and a bunch of dudes bought the mountain guns and the Lou Horton guns, right? And I come on the PD. I'm like single. I don't have, much overhead. And some of the old heads are getting divorced. So I start buying these Lou Horton guns and all this for like $400 or $500, hanging them on the wall of my safe. And another instructor came by my house, and I had to, I'd bought a gun or something, and I was going to get some cash out of my gun safe. And I opened it up, and there's just a wall of like 44 mags. And he goes, "What's that?" And I was like, "Dude, that's a wall of broken dreams right there. That's all it is." I've told that story like a dozen times, but it's just, God, I kick myself for letting every one of those go.
Oh, so what you're saying is there is a possibility you owned this at one time.
There is, there's a, I don't know how many of those Lou Horton 3-inch 29s there were, but not very many from what I remember. And at one time I had 2 of them, and then I had a 3-inch 629. And now I'm down to 2 29.2s. Oh God, I hate you both.
This is a 24. I can't remember what it was. A dash. It's a dash. No, it's not. It's pre-dash.
Yep. 624.
But no box, no papers. Guess how much I spent on this, because I just had to have one, and I didn't have the money in the 80s, so I had to buy the 44 mag when they came out with the 3-inch 44 mag, but it's not the same. It's $1,500.
Oh,
Then that's what they go for. No box, no papers.
That's what this was.
yeah.
Yeah, that's
Not
just
surprised.
kind of how it works. The 629s are a little bit easier to come by because there's a lot more of them. Why they stopped making these beautiful 44 specials is beyond me.
Yeah.
And my wife said, you need to sit at a Thinks and have Thinks do some stuff to it. I'm like, nobody's touching this. Nobody's touching this, period.
Yeah.
It's my friend.
I kind of speculate the reason they eliminated the 624s were most guys by that point had kind of figured out that you were a little more versatile having a 44 mag chamber, and they just weren't very popular. Kind of like the Ladysmith guns, right? Those were some of the best revolvers ever. And they fizzled because, right idea, wrong time. So.
And killing the customers. That's a Halo. Now that's the one I bought when they first came out, and did a little write-up for a revolver guy that I put in the deal. This is a super fun gun to not shoot. It's a great gun to carry in Bigfoot territory in the southeast Oklahoma and
Don't
South
shoot
Washington,
it.
but less fun.
Is that one of the ones they did with the KL frame? Or
No,
grip?
No, I don't know I don't know about the stocks on this. They look almost like combat Magnum grips, but they're not. They actually work just fine, for carrying and shooting a little bit, but not for a whole lot.
So
yeah, kind of like those.
I've seen some runs of guns they did where the actual frame of the grip, not the actual window and all that, was made on a KL size. So the stocks were K and L size instead of N size.
No, this is all in. This is relatively new. This is a 2019, 20.
I'd be curious to see if K stocks would fit on that, because I've heard different rumblings that and it's just the area where the mainspring goes through the actual deal. Because
I don't know. When they went to round butt, they did a lot of different cool stuff, and I'm not the historian when it comes to that. I just love them.
We need to call Mike on that one, or Fricky or somebody. But
Darryl's going to know a ton on that.
Yeah. I had an in frame at one time, and I don't remember which one it was, that it was a newer version that actually the stocks wouldn't fit in frame stocks. And I'm like, what the heck? And the actual window for the mainspring was small and I get to reading in the manual, and it's like such and such special edition KL frame stocks compatible or something. And I was like, what? But I mean, it opened up the amount of availability of round butt stocks you had, though. So I can't remember if that was on a 6 or 327. It was something oddball like that. And anyway, could be, I don't know, but I think that's what they did with the X frames, is their K and L size frames, or the actual grip frame, or the stock frame, instead of like not just a window, but I just bought a baby Chief. You ever seen one of them?
No.
I got to go pick it up. It's an I frame. It's the 32 frame in a 5-shot Chief. Cool. Flat latch. They made
never
them in
even seen one of those.
Yeah, they only made them in 1950, and this one's got the original stocks. I'm like, oh yeah, it's been reblued, or it'd have been like a $3,000 gun, but the reblue's
like
not bad.
P-38s that people had stainless. Yeah, they bring them back from the war, and then they stainless them, and it's like, shit, that could have been worth something,
Right. Oh, I had a Baylor Custom on a Nazi artillery high power. I was like, that was chopped. I was like, oh God, that's like a $4,000 gun that they've made into a $500 gun. But in the 60s, it was just another high power. So
true.
Exactly. This is what kind of fun we could have with that episode. That would be like,
to include the Webley chambered 455 Webley. I just looked at the YouTube chat and saw someone say, well, I'm tired of you guys talking about that unless you bring out a Webley. Here's the Webley.
It's one of my favorite scenes in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, when like the Messerschmitt's getting ready to strafe him, and he cracks open his Webley and is like, oh. And then Dad goes out there with the umbrella and knocks the plane. I was like, man, I know what a classic movie. But anyway, I've been looking for a 1917, like a 6-inch Smith, to have it cut back and do like an Indiana Jones retro gun.
Yeah.
And then a couple of movies he carried hand ejectors, and I can't afford those. So
fun gun episode. That just would be fun.
Is this the bonus content time?
It is
bonus content.
But unfortunately, I'm getting texts that I guess it's World War V upstairs. So I need to make sure that there's a 12-year-old that's done with homework and a 2-year-old is changed and ready for bed.
Adulting, man.
It happens. So let's see here. I'll see you guys not this Friday, but next.
A week from Friday.
Like 9 days.
Yeah. And I'll be staying in Dallas at my dad's.
I might even stop by the hotel Thursday to see if anybody's doing anything.
I'll be in town.
I'm not sure what time we're going. By the time we get there and get hooked up, it might be too late to fart around. And we may have Alex Kogan maybe bunking with us too.
He's SOing for me that one of the days.
That's how he gets around paying the fee to get in, the little fucker.
Well,
and then he's staying with us.
Hey man, travel on a budget. Dude's a rock star, man. He's figured it out.
I love that fucking guy. He'll probably drive through here on the way.
I'm driving in. I'm going to leave here, Oklahoma City at like 3:30, 4 in the morning, because it's only a 3-hour drive for me. So get there a little early. And then my girlfriend's driving down Friday after work, so she'll probably be there 6:30, 7 o'clock. And I'm sure her and Melanie have an itinerary already developed. So it's just going to be, where am I supposed to be and what am I supposed to be wearing? Thank you. But
all right. That's awesome. I can't wait to see you guys. This is going to be fun.
Yeah, it'll be a good year. All right. Well, we need to let Matt go back to adulting now.
Yep. Go back to being a grown up.
Silliness. So just out of curiosity, also with this guy, I don't have like a crane screw that's going to, I'm just being a smartass.
Something's going to come loose.
Yeah. No, this, I don't dare take it to a gunsmith. I don't shoot it. I just have it because it's so damn cool. But it's a baby rattle.
I spent 8 hours yesterday unscrewing a 19-4 with a sprung side plate and grip screw issues and timing issues. And I was telling Darryl about it, and I said I had to pull out the 1976 George Nani book on. So I'm sitting there with a ball peen hammer and a Smith & Wesson hand on my dining room table on a mat and a block, retiming a revolver, and for Hanny McMood. So Hanny, love you, bro, but you kind of owe me maybe owe me something to drink there.
Just one.
It was a massive undertaking. The only thing I didn't have to do to the gun was drive the barrel pin out and set the barrel back. Everything else had to be like gone through, and I undertook it out of the goodness of my heart. I was like, I want Hanny to have a cool gun. So yeah.
Oh, and I just realized we didn't do our official close stuff. I guess I should do that. I was just going to sign off. Big thanks to the panel. Big thanks to you, the listener or viewer. Awesome discussion. If there's a subject you want us to discuss at some point, you can email me at matt@primaryandsecondary.com, because that's my email. Let's see here. Big thanks to our sponsors. Big thanks to Big Tex Ordnance. Big thanks to Overwatch Precision. Big thank you to Filster. Big thanks to Primary Arms. Big thanks to Walther. And lastly, huge, not just big, but huge thank you to the Patreon subscribers, supporters, whatever they are. Lots of bills to pay with Primary and Secondary. We have a lot of free material. I vowed when I first started this in 2014, I would never have any of the good information behind a paywall. Discussions like this will always be free. Content that we provide like this will always be free. So it's paid for. We have sponsors and we also have Patreon. Both of them pay all the bills. And also pays for time, because believe it or not, this is time consuming, putting all this kind of stuff together, editing, processing, uploading. There's hosting, there's editing software, there's all kinds of stuff behind the scenes. But again, it is all free. So if you like this kind of stuff, make sure you've already subscribed. Make sure you hit like, especially if this was beneficial to you. And as I usually say, make sure you're supporting those sources that you have found to be beneficial. That includes primary and secondary stuff, because that's what we're striving to be. We want to be a source that is beneficial to you to use and to learn from. And this learning is also a two-way street. With our Facebook group, with our forum, there's not one person that has all the answers. Even a beginner, even all the end users have some valuable feedback. This is part of the reason why we have some rules talking about explain your answers, especially in the Facebook group. You can tell me the High Point is the best gun in the world. And if you can back up what you're saying, there's no issue. I'm not going to necessarily agree with you, but if you can back up and if you can provide your logic, that might help someone else understand, because ultimately we can use Google to find what? but we need you to tell us why. So we have all this stuff. If you want to help support the network, go to patreon.com/primary and secondary. I have various tiers, everything from $1 monthly to $100 monthly. There are various benefits going from 1 to 100. 5 seems to be the most popular. That gives you access to these when they're live. You can chat with us. Also, there's Discord available. Discord's always moving. A lot of behind the scenes discussions there too. Have some awesome people that are involved with primary and secondary. We're talking about another video shoot coming up in May. What else? Yeah, we have a website, forum, primaryandsecondary.com. It's all available through there. Also 736 different Facebook groups. It's a good time. So that is all. I would not be surprised if I do another one of these in the next couple days. I do want to get another before TACCon. I would like to get 2 more before TACCon, just so I can have things preloaded and ready to go, so I'm not rushed. But that is all. I think I'm going to kill the feed here, run upstairs, make sure everyone's still alive, then run back down and do some editing because I'm off for the next 3 days. So that is all.
All right,
Talk to you guys later.
See ya.
See you, man.
We'll see you.
Lee Weems just texted me. He can barely hear me.
Gosh.
Can you hear me?
That Lee Weems. I can hear you just fine.
I
With
hear
your radio
everybody
voice.
else. I hear everyone else loudly, but I can't hear Bryan.
Selective hearing.
Could be.
Dude, just
Are you
consider
trying
that
to
a blessing.
ignore him?
How about now? Can you hear me now?
It's a little better, but it's still, you're quieter than everyone else. Stoger has a 9mm striker fired offering that is getting really good reports for in the $300 range. 3 somethings.
How about now, Lee?
It's still the same.
Turn up your Lee volume. Yeah, isolate Lee and just turn up his.
Always one,
Yeah,
man.
for a second, I was like, how do you do that?
It's like they're a married couple.
I'm just,
Oh, wait till
dude, I'm
Hearne gets
cranking the
involved.
output.
And you sound good.
You sound fine to me.
Oh, you want to hear married couple? How do you get Hearne on your podcast at 8 p.m. and I have to wait till 9 to get
I don't know. He just showed up. No one invited him. He just shows up to these.
He gives me $20 every time I tip him off.
Exactly.
Testing Lee Weems, testing.
Your sound really light and muffled, and everybody else is fine.
Maybe all
And
of us should talk quietly.
To answer your question, Lee, I finally have like the building semi-functional. Like it's still not painted and pretty yet, but I actually have inroad out here and I can do out here and my wife doesn't have to fight off the kids. So it's a bit of a game changer.
And you do
So
have
they've got her
professional
bound and gagged inside.
Yes,
And
yes.
How about now, Lee? Can you hear
That's
me now?
not my problem.
I can hear you, Bryan, but your volume is like half of what everyone else's is.
Huh. That's weird.
But Matt, you got me okay?
Well, Matt's more important than I am. So don't worry
Yeah,
about
clearly.
that.
I'm wondering if you were to disconnect and come back, if that would fix it. Because I know Darryl had an issue with it looked like audio just based on his facial expressions.
I unplugged the wrong one.
You're on mute. DB.
Darryl, you're muted, bro. Still muted.
He's on audio strike.
There we go. How's that?
There you go.
There you go.
Yeah, no,
Unbelievable.
my tax ladies got a hold of me and needed a document, and that was more important than you guys right now. So, and I can't do
You
7
file
things
your
at
taxes
once.
on time? You file your
There's
taxes on time. It drives my wife crazy. We file taxes in October, by God.
Well, yeah, we usually do it. My personal ones, I want to always be first in line because I use it like a savings account, so I want it back. But hey, you know what I got today?
Oh, yeah. 856 Toro.
Yep. EPS carry on it, among other things today while I was at Jackson Armory. Bad things happened.
Well, if
But I'm
Hearne
kind of
gets-
excited.
if Hearne gets some ears and a microphone, I'm gonna have to feel like a little inferior. It's just me and you. We're supposed to be the nerdiest one.
I don't like the Princess Leia look. I prefer this. So
How about now, Lee?
I don't want to see any of those.
I can
guys
hear
in
you,
a
but you're not
armored
the same
bikini.
level as everybody else.
Maybe his voice is right on that octave or whatever. That
You know,
You're
Brian, every
deafened.
time you've been on mine, when we played the audio back, it sounded fine when we were talking, but you were always lower. And you said you fixed something, and the last time you were on, it was fine.
Brian, speak higher.
How about now? How about now, Lee? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you, but it's not.
That's gonna make the B-roll.
Dude,
Yeah.
my
Brian, do you have a drug rug on, man?
Yeah.
Yes, he
dude.
does.
I was
Yeah.
trying to identify what the hell that was.
We went shopping together. I got Brian all set up for retired dude stuff. He's in the retired cop FTO program right now.
That's right.
And the first thing you got to do is go out and get a drug rug, so you can,
They're
blend with
comfortable.
blend with the peoples. I'm king of the drug rug.
Yeah, I had to join the ranks of Bolke and Cecil Birch and get my wizard rug on. Oh
Yeah.
God, it's hot.
Yeah.
No, I got
But
You have to think about what you just said. Review what you just said and figure out whether you need to slap yourself.
hey man. This retiree FTO program has been way more difficult than I thought it was going to be.
But more valuable.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, Lee. I don't know what's going on. I've got my microphone just ripping on the audio side. Am I too loud
Yeah,
for
he
you,
seems-
Matt?
No, you're fine.
No. Okay.
You're perfect
saying
for everybody
loud-
else.
Yeah, you seem a little bit louder than you were earlier, but it's not like obnoxious loud.
Well, that's good because the last
Yeah.
thing I want to do is annoy anyone.
Well, we needed your volume up because the chances you were going to say something more intelligent than Hearne were like really high.
Oh, dude, you're already beating up on our buddy.
Dude.
The only reason I'm here.
I'm surprised no one's commented on it, the soundproofing he has behind him.
Well,
We saw him put it up.
It's his shed. He can
Yeah.
do what he wants.
Yep.
it's a she shed.
It's got a lawn chair.
This is this is the world headquarters. It's not 100% set up, but it's finally usable. I had no idea.
I got to rub this in, John. I just need to rub this in. So I got to give you kind of a tour. So we've got, the real wood gun cabinet, lions, Cape buffaloes, more dead animals. Look at that crocodile leather sofas, the Pat wall with Pat and the LAPD guys, at a whiskey bar. That's what a man shed is supposed to look like. So you have goals.
Yeah, well, okay. So this is all the training business crap, right? This is the other half of the unfinished shed, right? But I do have HVAC, and my rack's going to be in here shortly. So, but I had to do almost all the work myself, which meant it was really done poorly and really slowly.
You can go to IKEA and get you a chair.
I've got to try. I'm going to have a whole little corner where I can just probably have some lights and pop in. I just getting out of the house has been huge as far as making this thing work.
The last time, the best and worst thing about the Bolke's man cave is the last time I was there, I'm sitting there in the crocodile leather and it's engulfing me. And I'm like, oh.
That's where I am right now. It's like, oh God.
Oh, I'm going to fall asleep. And then Darryl goes, oh yeah, you were supposed to work on that 856 Taurus. And I'm like, crap, it's 9. All right, well, let's get it done. So
you have another one. You have another one now.
Yeah. That'll be interesting.
Oh, you got all sorts of stuff. It's bad when my wife goes, when I brought that Model 31 home, and the first thing after my wife confiscated it, and she goes, the trigger's a little heavy, but I'll have Brian fix that when he's here. I'm like, you steal the gun, you steal my personal private gunsmith, I don't know.
It's a small price for putting up with you, to be fair.
Oh, absolutely. No, I hit one out of the park and I know it, so I just put up with it. But she got her hands on that Toro today and she's eyeing that up, and I go, no, you're sponsored by them too. You can get your own thing. So
Now, when you say hit out of the park, are you referring to Bryan or your wife?
Yes.
both Bryan and I have both outkicked our coverage. And now the frightening thing is both our better halves are like they talk all the time. It's like severe plotting going on.
Oh,
Team
And
girl
Bryan and
power.
we are just along for the ride at this point. Bryan and I have no idea what's going on. We just show up when they tell us to. It's a little frightening.
The beauty is, like, I guess it was like November or something. I'm down in Dallas, and Melanie pulls out a planner, and I'm like, oh crap, Trish has got one just like that. This is okay.
Oh no, they're logisticians.
Oh, I mean, there's slide rules and there's color codes. And Trish the other night, the funniest part the other night, she goes, hey, Mel and I, we're going to go to TACCon on Saturday because I'm coming in late Friday, and we're going to come in the morning. And she hands me the TACCon schedule, and I'm like, I've been meaning to print that off for like 2-3 days. And she has it highlighted to the court, like the lectures that she and Melanie are going to. And I'm like, I'm going to most of those because I don't have to teach till Saturday afternoon. I was going to go to one of them is yours, John, just to, give you a little vote of confidence. There will be 2 women in that class that are going to be hanging on every word. So
taking notes.
Notify them.
Not just 2, sir.
Well,
Usually
they will be taking
women that he's not
copious
allowed to be
notes.
around them.
That reminds me, I probably ought to write my class.
oh
It's
yeah.
getting close. It's getting close.